the second, not annual, because reasons, Organizer Summit. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but everybody, thank you for being here today, and most of you for being here not at 10:30 or whatever after some of you strolling in. I actually thought Frosty was getting to bed at 5 a.m. He meant he woke up at 5 a.m., but I will just say it wasn't an unreasonable mistake to make. So people have traveled from all over the place. I'm really excited that we're here. I'm going to just kick off with a few opening remarks, and we're going to get right into it. If you don't know, my name is Maddie. I am one of the Chicago organizers. A little bit, but speaking of that, if I could get the fellow organizers of DevOpsDays Chicago, if you could just stand up. We are your hosts for the next few days. So this will be the 9th time we're doing DevOpsDays Chicago. We're also really excited that you all are here to be with us for the next couple days, but that starts tomorrow. Starting today, it's our Organizer Summit. So welcome. Yeah, so this is a global collective. This is all of us from all over the world. People have traveled from as far away as Australia or even Madison, Wisconsin, to be here, and it's how we can get together. And when we think about this first time we did this, took place at the 10th anniversary of DevOps Days ever in Ghent in 2019. So raise your hand if you were at this first global summit. So awesome, cool. If you weren't there, welcome to this one. Massive thanks to our friends from DevOps Days Benelux Collective, whatever you guys call yourselves. But the Ghent folks who put this together, it was really amazing. It was a really touching and special time. And we sat there and we said, this is really great. We need to do this really frequently. Let's try to do one next year. I don't know what happened, why it took us this long to do it again. But it was really, really great to be able to do this. And my suggestion was that we would do it in Chicago because my new goal is to travel less and have you all come to me. But we're really excited to get together. And we're just going to give a couple thoughts about how the day is going to go. And we're going to get right into it. So first of all, for a Wi-Fi perspective, the network name is Convene. The password is Stay Connected. I think this was in one of the emails you got, maybe, and if it wasn't, whatever, people can help you find it. If you're still using the Elon Musk Meltdown website, that's the DevOps Days account. As I think most people know, that's our hashtag. We'd love to see people post on social, take lots of pictures. We have an amazing photographer with us over the next few days who was with us back at the pre-COVID days. So welcome back. And she's going to be taking great pictures throughout both today and throughout as well. And we will be, I'll talk about it in the program, there is a point later today we'll try to get a big group picture together, and it'll be amazing and, cool. Awesome. These are the folks who brought you the Organizer Summit today. So we've got a bunch of folks from Chicago, but also folks from all over. So if you see them, say thank you. We're doing our best. It's been a fun little trip through as we sort of been throwing this together. And it's especially interesting to me to have a group of DevOps Days organizers all organizing something together, and you realize just how different we all think about these things and how we work on them together, but we all learned a lot from each other. That was not as passive-aggressive as I think Frosty thought it was. Okay, reminder though, there are 5 things that are required for any DevOps Days. If you know the 5 rules, maybe we call them, the 5 laws, the 5 just don't F it up. One of them is to have a code of conduct. We all know this, we're all DevOps Days organizers. It is also necessary for and important for our event here. So the code of conduct can be found there. And these are our code of conduct committee for the Organizer Summit, are Yost, Floor, and JJ. They will be there to help you, and if any type of issues or things come up. For the Organizer Summit, we are experimenting with a piece of software that a fellow DevOps Days organizer, PJ Haggerty of Buffalo, has created in Oregon called Call of Conduct. Everyone should have gotten an email that has your own special link. This is where if you have any type of issue. That said, don't feel required to use that. There's other way, find, Yos or JJ or Floor. You can approach them if you need to. Be cautious. You got 2 emails because there was one for DevOps Day Chicago and one for the Organizer Summit. Make sure you use the one for Organizer Summit. We are actually not using it for Chicago for the rest of the week, and we can talk about that another time. But we're experimenting with it here, and of course, look at this as to see if it's something you might want to investigate for your events, talk to PJ and such. But again, always you can reach us in all the other ways. Health and safety stuff. So for us, masks are optional at this event, but harassing someone on their mask choice either way is a code of conduct violation. So let's please respect everybody's personal choices. If you do start to feel sick, please don't keep coming, and also please let us know, because we'd like to know. If anybody, we're not doing any kind of like official contact tracing thing, but if we find it, we'll definitely do our best to communicate to people if anyone is sick. And also, just as a reminder, we are checking vaccine cards and negative tests every day. So when you come in tomorrow and Thursday, you go through that again. If you are needing to use a test, see us. This is a helpful thing because you already came today. We will happily give you a box of 2 you can bring back to your hotel or whatever, and you can just bring the test in tomorrow. You don't have to go through that. That'll help you out a little bit. Or if you even have your own and you want us to replace it, this was the lesson I learned from London, which was a pretty smart way to do it. Either way. But yeah, and you will get a different sticker every day, and that will be how that goes. Where is Anderson? Brian. Oh. There. Okay, well, anyway, our volunteer and registration coordinator and health and safety chair is not in the room, but anyway, if you see, he's at registration. Anyway, if you have any questions or anything related to these things, Brian would be happy to help you, and especially when you come back tomorrow and Thursday, if there's our volunteers for Chicago have been instructed to be, if there's any questions, just send them to Brian, because we don't want them to have to deal with it. Anyway, enough about that. But also, sadly, one of our DevOps Days organizers who was supposed to speak tomorrow at Chicago and come and join us has just came down with COVID, and it was unfortunate for several reasons, not the least being that it happened to him last year at Chicago and he couldn't give his talk. So the lesson of this, by the way, is Josh has always given Ignite talks at Chicago, and we gave him a 30-minute talk, and he got COVID, and he came back, and so the lesson is just don't give Josh a long talk. Cool, so here is our program of today, such as it is. And when I say such as it is, there's a small change, but today we'll kind of start with this QR code will take you to that. I think most people in this room are familiar with the layout of the DevOpsDays website. You know how things go. So this is also a fun fact. I forgot to put an end time on this event when I registered, which meant this morning, if you woke up, the Global Organizer Summit fell off the main page. And nobody to blame but me, because I put it up there and I wrote the damn code. But it's fixed. So if you go there, so we'll have some talks in the morning. We'll have some folks from Core talk about that. Laura's going to talk about community collapse. Evo's going to talk about ways that you can save money on your registration and other tools. Floor's going to talk, and we have some stuff with PJ, who is on for that here, about hybrid. I will talk a couple of things about how the DevOpsDays website goes, and then at 11 is when we'll have a break, and that's when we'll try to arrange for the group photo. So during one of the other breaks, I'll talk to you. We can figure out how we want to do that, and we'll give some direction. But I think we'll do it in here, and we'll figure that out. And then after that, we will have Hannah and Paula are going to give us a little tour of their history at DevOpsDays London. How many people here use Conference Ops? How many of you ever met Laura in person before? How many of you are going to get to meet Laura in person today and see her give a talk? So out of everybody, I'm just going to say this real quick, and maybe I'd say the one that's introducing everybody. I just want to say this. There's a lot of knowledge and expertise in running DevOps Days in this room. A lot of us have been doing it a lot. The person who knows more about how DevOps Days get run than anybody in this goddamn room is Laura Wickett. So anyway. And then, Yop will and Aaron will finish us off in the morning, and then we will do our open spaces in the afternoon. The one small change that is not on this, it's on the website, it's just not on the screenshot, is that we're actually done at 5:30, not 6. We have to be out the door at 5:30. Shouldn't affect anything too much. Oh, you did? Oh, I didn't know that you updated the screenshot. Sorry. You did. Excellent. Okay, so that's fine. And then we'll talk about the evening event in a second, where that goes. So that will be what our day looks like today. So the evening event is brought to you by DevOpsDays Amsterdam, Eindhoven, and Ghent. So thank you, folks. It will be, it starts around 6. So you will have, and it's about 2 to 3 blocks away from here, super close. You feel free to go and change and refresh before you go there or go straight there, either way. We have lots of great food there, lots of options, vegan, veggie, all sorts of stuff. It's all you can drink until 8 p.m. And then starting from 8 to 10 is when it starts to hit Evo's credit card. So, feel free, but take it easy, y'all, but also take it easy, y'all, because it's all you can drink, let's be responsible and such. And there will be dessert. And if you look like or are under 30, make sure you have an ID. And you must be 21 or over to get in there, which is why this is also, we are inviting also the speakers from DevOpsDays Chicago, one of whom cannot come to this because she is 11. And I complained about it a lot and they didn't do anything. Anyway, so that's happening tonight. We will see you there. And what? Then yeah, you can insist to be carded if you want, right? That's maybe not a bad idea. So this is, so you will see on your badge, this map is not 100% accurate for today. This is how it will, because we're using the same badges for Chicago and Summit. You will notice when you see people tomorrow, they don't have the little Summit badge on theirs because they aren't special. But the map is actually what it's going to look like tomorrow and Thursday, but there's a smaller version of the areas that we have for our open spaces. I think everyone's kind of seen how things go today. There's lots of little areas. There's some phone rooms if you need to take a call. We have our food out there, but you'll have seen various stations throughout labeled as Nourish. We've got, okay, I'm done. Okay, hey, fair enough. Anyway, coffee, pop, snacks. Okay, we'll talk about this during a different break a little bit, but for our open spaces, we are doing an experiment with hybrid. So we have these Slack channels in the main DevOpsDays Slack. These are all the open space rooms, and there's a process, and JJ will talk about it later. So thank you. If you have not ordered your Organizer Summit shirt yet, you should have actually got an email. We'll talk about this, but you have the ability to get it shipped to you thanks to Jason and Jody, who really ran with our and Yost, yes, with our, they were on swag and logo and stuff like that. And if you'd like to know a little bit more about how this got done, and maybe you might want to try it for yours, maybe we'll have an open space about it, maybe we'll talk about it later. Thank you to all the events who helped sponsor this happening. That help with the sponsorship not only helped with some of the cost of doing this, but we also were able to provide travel assistance to quite a few people who wouldn't be able to get here otherwise. So thank you to all the cities who were able to help us with that. This makes a big difference in our ability to run this. And again, DevOpsDays Chicago will be starting tomorrow. So if you go to DevOpsDays Chicago, see what's going on. And yes, also our Yak mascot will be making an appearance at lunch today here as well for your selfie and photo opportunities. What? Yeah. And also, if you are, we've put this link to Chicago as you're enjoying your time here. Some recommendations. We have this. I think a lot of people were figuring some good stuff out yesterday, and we'll talk about that later. So that will bring us to our first talk of the day. Joining us are your 3 co-chairs, Frosty, Katie, and Evo. So please welcome.
Well, hello. Hi. Hold on. I got to take a be real. Everybody smile. Hi. Hey, social media.
What social media?
No. This one's French.
What?
It's French social. Hi. How's everybody doing? We got a clicker. My name is Dan. Hi. I'm a recovering system administrator. 6 months clean on my honor. And I'm also one of the co-chairs of the DevOpsDays conference series alongside.
We have slides for this.
Do we have slides for this?
Yes.
We do.
If you click it, the big green button.
I am introducing the
And then
DevOps
another
Days
one.
Global Co-Chairs.
And then one more.
Oh, Eva, why don't you go first?
There you go.
So
It's like
my
we
name is,
practiced this.
Yeah, this is hard, right? All right. So my name is Ivo, or Ivo Van Doren for long. I'm the oldest co-chair, so we'll talk more about that later. But I guess I'm dusk when you think about it from a foundation perspective. If you watch the TV show. Yes, there's at least a few. I run the SE team for a company called HiBob. Nothing to do with DevOps. I love it. It's completely my day job is not thinking about DevOps. I live in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, not Amsterdam, New York. I do have family living in Amsterdam, New York, but I live in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And but when you hear me, I sound 100% Dutch or 100% American, but I'm actually 100% Dutch.
Hi. I'm Dan.
Hi, Dan.
Hi. I have a job that I don't like very much, so I'm not going to talk about it. I live. Sorry. I live in Paris, and the fun fact about me is that I am a former mixed martial arts fighter. I was paid to beat people up for a short period of time, which is a very hard way to make a living. I don't recommend it. I am French, and like Ivo, despite my accent, I sound relatively North American, but I am French. So if you want to learn anything about France, or talk about wine, or talk about cheese, or you want to come out to my house, feel free. Just let me know. All right. Yeah, super good.
And it's me. Hello, I do not sound American. I sound English? No, Australian. G'day. I'm Katie. I'm the dawn of the crew. I was not in Ghent, and yet I'm in charge now. Cool. I'm a developer relations engineer at Google Cloud. More about what I do for a day job tomorrow, because apparently I need to speak twice. And fun fact about me, if you've ever used the parrot emoji, you're welcome.
Dun, dun, dun.
For context, the Party Parrot emoticon is now in Unicode because I wrote a very well-crafted latex PDF and sent it to the right people, and now it's in Unicode. Yay. You're welcome.
Nice, nice. Alrighty. So, hey, we are core organizers. That's what we are, and that's actually what we're going to talk about a little bit today, as I understand it. We have some slides over here. So we're the co-chairs, but there's a bunch of other core organizers here
Would you
today.
like to be in front of the
Maybe,
slides
so I could see the things. Hi. I think this is you, though, right? It's got your face
You're
on
already
it.
doing it, so let's
okay.
roll with it.
Because I couldn't see it.
I would like all the core organizers in the room to stand up.
If you can click the next slide.
If you're a
which
core
is great.
organizer, please stand up. Please stand up.
All these lovely people.
Hi, everybody.
So there's a few levels, different levels of being a core organizer. There's actually 4 types of core members. There's emeritus, which is the former active core members. That means they're no longer organizing. They've stepped away. They're doing bigger, better, worse, less, whatever things, but they're just no longer part of the crew. We do thank them for their service. So I don't think do we have any emeritus in the room?
I don't think, do we have any emeritus? Do I? Oh, hey! Hey, what's up? I didn't even see you back there. You're like a ninja. You just blend right in.
Ninja, he's just blended right in, just sitting there in the back.
Incredible.
Advisory core members are basically active core members or former active core members who are still doing a few things, but you can't commit them to do anything. So they'll have an opinion, and they'll give that opinion, but you can't tell them to do anything. No. Because they just don't. They'll be like, that's wrong, and then they'll just disappear. Or that's right, and they'll disappear. That's advice.
That's when we need advice, we need perspectives that are disconnected from sort of the day-to-day management, right? Because has anybody here ever organized a conference before? You know when you're in it, you get the tunnel vision, and sometimes it's hard to be objective about things. And that's where advisory core really comes in.
Yep.
Is they're the sounding board. They're not part of the same tunnel vision as we are when we're actually in the trenches trying to make things go, right?
And a great example of advisory is Nathan there in the back.
Hi, Nathan.
Then
thank you for your opinions.
Yes. So that does bring us to the active core. So what does active do? So active is responsible for the pull requests. They have the largest set of tasks and responsibilities. They're the people that we engage with the most as organizers. And it's really the type of member that we're going to be talking about today.
Mostly.
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 And then finally, there's a special type of active quorum called chair, which you have to wear a wig in order to be chair. This
If you don't
is really
have your
bothering
own
me.
dyed hair, store-bought is fine.
Fair. Next year, apparently, I have to go with pink beard, is what I heard now, as something that's, yeah, exactly. But it has a special and specific set of tasks and responsibilities that active doesn't touch. There are going to be 2 to 3 active chairs at any given moment, and all 3 of us are on stage right now.
Yeah.
Hey!
Hi, everyone. So nice to see you all.
I did have a list of all the people, and I tried to make sure that the people who were in attendance were around, but we've already done that
But we've
part.
already
Yeah.
done that part. Okay,
so
cool.
Yes.
So
Even the people that bought their ticket yesterday, Nathan, are on the slide.
oh my god. So a bunch of people couldn't make it though,
Yeah.
right? Which is important to power, like Adrian, Byrne, Bridget, Jennifer, Ken, Chris, Marco, Michelle, Nathan, Patrick, and Rafael. That's fine. They couldn't make it, but they're with us in spirit, and hopefully are watching on the live stream. This is being streamed, right? That's
Maybe.
my understanding.
Yep.
So hi. Hopefully you can see me waving. Thank you for all the stuff. Super. All right. So what do we do? Oh yeah, this is mine. It's got my face on it. Before we go any further, I really want to stress something really, really important. And that is that, like everyone else in this room, when it comes to DevOps Days, when you're an organizer, you're a volunteer for DevOps Days, the core, global core, and the chairs and everybody, we're volunteers too, right? We have day jobs, we have families, we have other volunteer groups that we're a part of because we're invertebrate problem solvers and we can't say no. And everyone's just doing our best out here, right? So if you're concerned that your PR is not getting merged fast enough, or the Slack invite took a couple days to get sent out, or you want to have a change to your mailing list, and you're like, why is it taking more than 5 minutes? Just remember, we're volunteers, and we're doing the best we can. Thank you. So what is it that we do, right? I think is kind of the crux of the thing. The reality is that is a shockingly large list of things in terms of breadth, but the depth of any of those things is highly variable. And not every active core member does all of the things, okay? The things that are shallow tend to get spread around because they're a little easier and kind of anybody can do them, so you just pick it up, right? And the things that are deep tend to get taken care of by like 1 or 2 really brave individuals. And there's like an itemized list of, an itemized list of things that core does. It exists, it's a document that we've been working on. And it's way too long to fit on a slide. So I've organized it into some themes and provided some examples, which we're gonna go through. Yeah, God, the text is so small. God. I wrote too many speaker notes is my issue. So the 2 themes are concept and implementation, right? The most important concept, for me at least, this is my opinion, and people can argue about it, and that's cool, but that's stewardship. So we on the core, we act as stewards for the brand and for the experience. And if that sounds nebulous to you, 1, it is, but 2, consider this. No matter what DevOps Days you go to, anywhere in the world, it feels like a DevOps Days, right? That doesn't happen by accident, right? Really, really doesn't. It's not a coincidence. It's something we have to actively cultivate. There are a lot of other tasks and responsibilities within the core sphere, but it all ultimately points back to this idea of stewardship, right? We've been in the game a long time. Collectively, core members have like many decades of institutional and tribal knowledge about DevOps Days and about how to do conferences and blah, 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 just like, everyone else in this room, right? I mean, this is a millennia of experience, sitting in front of us right now, which is amazing. Reaching back to the very first event in 2009, thanks to having the advisory and having the, access to everybody, right? So I guess to quote the greatest corporate slogan of all time, you've got questions, we've got answers. If you have any questions about your event, if you have any questions from organizing a schedule to handling sponsors, to running open spaces, to code of conduct, literally anything else, core is your privileged source for this information. It's literally what we signed up to do, is to help you with this stuff. And we do a lot. which is it's good. It's a good thing you reach out to us. Please keep reaching out to us. We're here to help solve problems, to give you advice, to find you money, whatever it is you need, right? Finally, when necessary, we can and do act as an escalation path for issues that can't satisfactorily be resolved, right, at an event level. A good example of this are code of conduct issues that require a neutral, third-party perspective, stuff that gets kind of sticky, can't be solved. It's okay. Just escalate that up to us. We have a whole process. We have a whole way of handling these things. It's fine. We'll work it out. Never hesitate to send us an email, reach out to us on Slack, et cetera, et cetera. Finally, that brings us to implementation. Here's a little taste. It's just a taste of some of the things that we do kind of on a day-to-day basis. And again, the real list is really long. It's problematic how long it is, frankly, and we're going to talk about how we would like to solve that problem in a little bit. I'd like to make a special mention of the website. A special mention of DevOpsDays.org. It is deceptively complicated, and it's basically held together through the sheer force of will of one person, Matt Stratton, everybody.
Round of applause.
Matt really, 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 really wants more people to learn how to make the website go. We'll talk about how you can volunteer for that in a little bit. And many other fun and rewarding activities that you can get involved in. I mentioned there's a special type of core. We mentioned there's a special type of core called chair. And again, that's us, right? We're the chairs. Okay, the concepts don't change. It's still, the stewardship and the mentoring and the escalation path. But the idea is that we kind of embody them really intensely, right? Like, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. But the idea is that we're trying really, 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 really hard to do these things and to set good examples and to give good advice. And if we give you some advice and you don't like it, it's okay. Right? Don't worry about it. We do all the various things that core does, but we have a handful of special responsibilities, relatively small amounts of money that need to be collected and dispersed. But it's actually Laura, for the most part, that handles this, so thank you, Laura. Really appreciate that. We just basically decided to ask Laura what to do functionally, right? That's the segue to the real differentiator, which is difficult decisions. Difficult decisions. We don't actually have to make a ton of difficult decisions, which is really nice. Y'all are extremely competent, well-meaning people. But the ones that do land in our to-do list are generally doozies, right?
They keep us up.
Yeah, thick, thorny issues that we get stomach aches over and lose sleep over, and it can be tough. The situations are complex, they're complicated, they're sensitive, they're emotional, they're political, they're cultural. It's usually a combination of those things. And that can be really hard, it's a lot of emotional labor to deal with these things. God, I'm tearing up. Oh my God. Just thinking about some of this stuff. But given the nature of these situations, there's no good way for me to give you any concrete examples. Right? I can't tell you about some of this stuff specifically, but we do have to make tough calls from time to time. And when that happens, we generally have to take a little break afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So that's all we do. But then there's stuff we actually want to be doing. And so, on the next slide, I have the clicker. Make go. Some of the future plans that we have, as of when these slides were written, they may change by the end of this day. Who knows? We're going to have a bunch of conversations with a bunch of people. This list will probably be extended. However, there's slides later where you can help out. We need to fix email. We need to fix email. How many people here learnt about how to do complex email filters, literally based on the amount of stuff? Yeah, okay. So there's stuff we have to do there, and if I shuffle across, I can see there's a big podium there.
Go here.
I go here, okay. Dan really wants to fix it. That's one of the things that he said he would do, so hold him to that. But one of the things that Evo specifically wanted to do, and Dan mentioned this before, is be the brand. And I know, and we had conversations about this yesterday actually, where DevOps Days is not just names of people who have been on stages. It's about the culture, the concepts, and everything else. And if we can do one thing, it's finding the people who are post-Terraform. They've never done anything else apart from what is current now. And if we can help direct them to where we are, then we can help lift them up without them having to pass certain gatekeeping or have to be able to prove that they're able to write Bash and having to do all these things that just make it so othering when you're trying to get started in this space and you want to learn more. If we can be the place where people are like, hey, I need to help improve my craft, where can I go? And if they see a DevOps Days, they know what they're getting and they can start being the place that I wish I had when I started. Like, I should not have had to wait 10 years to find my people when I started in tech. So if we can make that better for people, that'd be great. But on the SEO side, was there something else you wanted to?
No, I think that's what you're doing is exactly, it's the next generation of the DevOps engineers. And like, yes, the word DevOps engineers, it comes with a whole lot of baggage, but it's really, I know what I'm doing. However, on a serious note, it's really that next generation. We've all been here in it for, a lot of us have been here for more than 6, 7, 10 years. But it's that new generation that's coming out of university that's joining their first job. We have to teach and inspire them as well. And so DevOps Days can't just be something you look up through a search engine. It needs to be a brand. It needs to be something that exists beyond just Google or your search engine. For example, in Amsterdam this year, we ran a student mentorship, meaning students could apply for almost nearly free to attend DevOps Days. And why are we doing that? Because we want to encourage and inspire that new generation. The donations that we're getting from these large corporations are allowing us to give the new generation of students access to DevOps Days and that knowledge, that community feeling, the people, everything.
And you know, we need to make sure that Maddie scales and all that other kind of stuff as well. But I do see that there's a timer, so I'm going to get to the part because there are 3 of us. We have Dawn, Day, and Dusk.
I'm Dusk.
Because we're kicking Evo out.
That's right.
He's
for a second time, because I actually
his
took over
time.
Matt's. Exactly. This is my second time getting kicked out, but now I'm really out.
Yes. Eva's term expires in about 12 weeks, which means that we have active nominations open for those who have been in core for minimum of 6 months. This should have been on the Slack, but we were busy trying to make sure that we had a conference. So there will be a formal application process for those people who are in core. We'll share that on the Slack in various meetings. But the biggest thing is that you don't have to be in core to help us do the things, because there is work to be done, and you don't have to be in core to help. I started out when the website was in Ruby, and then it got changed to Go and completely nerd-sniped me, and then I had to learn Go. But that's how I started getting into things, and people were like, oh, you look like you know what you're doing. Would you like to help more? And you don't have to, like, there's the funnel of contributors, and you can do a little bit, and you can say, yes, I'm done. You don't have to come into the whole core thing and then be a person that has ongoing responsibilities. You can just help, and we actively encourage that. If there are ideas that you have about ways that we can change everyone's experience for the better, we would love to talk to you. You can find us by, well, I'm not sure whether the wigs are staying the entire day because it's already very warm here, but you can see our wonderful faces throughout the week. We're on the Slacks. You know how to contact us, and we would really love to hear how we can make things better and such. That's all the slides I had. There you go.
Yeah, under time.
And look,
Thank you.
yay.
Hey, we're back on time. Haha, that doesn't happen. Awesome. Thank you so much, core chairs. And Evo, thank you so much for letting me dip a year earlier than I was supposed to, because that helps. Cool. So Laura's going to get mic'd up and ready for the next talk. I wanted to make just a couple little quick things that occurred to me. Katie said something that actually kind of applies to me too, where she said, you know, hey, started doing a certain way. The way that I ended up on core was I got pissed off at Webby and everything, and I said, geez, I'm going to see if I can figure out how to rewrite the website in Hugo. Sorry, everybody. And then I did, and I just sort of did that and sort of helped and stuff, and then after a year or two or whatever, they said, hey, why don't we invite you to be a core organizer. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that just because you decide to help without being on core that you will end up having to be on core. That's not necessary. That pipeline is not a guarantee. And I say that because you might not want to be in that pipeline, and that is absolutely respected and okay. But yes, we'll be talking a little bit more about website stuff a little bit later today. I had another thought, and I don't remember what it was, so it's okay. Cool deal. Laura is, as soon as she gets mic'd up, we will, after this talk, because we're back on time now, right? We will take a short break as well. By the way, if you look at the program, the way we've done this one is the talks are all having longer slots than they actually are, because that's where we've built in our Slack time. And I guess one thought I had when I was watching what Evo and Katie and Frosty were talking about is when Dan was talking about, like, hey, you know, all of the things and whatever, imagine we're all running a DevOps Days. Now imagine running the meta DevOps Days. And so what I mean by that is not like, core is amazing, you should all genuflect, and they're amazing, they are, but more of the fact of that we're all doing kind of the same stuff, right? So like, and that said, certainly open to kind of seeing how people do it. Are you good to go, Laura? And with that, I'd like to welcome Laura Santa Maria, Austin organizer, who will talk about something probably near and dear to a lot of our hearts right now, which is how do you pass the torch?
Passing the torch, all right. So hi. Hi. Hey. Hi. My name is Laura Santa Maria. Some of you know me, some of you don't. But I am one of the new core organizers for DevOps Days Austin. I nearly just said DevOps Days Texas. Oh, it's been a day. But the big reason that I'm actually up here is I've been through a lot of community leadership transitions. Not just with DevOps Days Austin, but with a lot of meetups, mostly because I can't say no. We all know how that's like, right? So I've been through many, many leadership handoffs. Some have been good. Some have very much not been so good. And I have presided over a couple of community collapses. And I will fully admit that one. So before I go too far, there we go. I want to give a little bit of Austin community history to set some context. This sets the stage for DevOps Days Austin's leadership transition and the failures and successes that we actually have experienced. So, without further ado, let's do a quick run through of the past 11 years in Austin. So, DevOps Days Austin and the local meetup scene have fed one another for the past 10 years, 11 years. 11 years. I'll just say 11, it's fine. We've had a lot of different meetups. Cloud Austin, Austin DevOps, Austin Automation Professionals, Docker Austin, Agile Austin. What am I forgetting? A lot, because there's a lot. There's way too many. Austin, yeah, like, I mean, I could keep going as to this huge list. The point is, though, is that this thriving meetup community fed all of DevOps Days Austin. So if you've come to DevOps Days Austin and you've experienced just how packed it can be, this is why. We had a very, very large local meetup community. We also had a specific meeting spot at Rackspace, which meant that no matter what, people didn't need to know where to find us online. They didn't really need to know anything, really. You could go to the bar, you meet somebody, and you say, hey, you should come to Cloud Austin. It's every third Tuesday at 6 p.m. at Rackspace. That's all you had to tell them, and they would show up, and then keep showing up. And so that's how our meetup community grew. So that was then. We also had a very diverse set of core organizers. It wasn't the same person running all of these meetups. Surprise. So there was the trio of Ernest, James, and Karthik. James, wave your hand. Hi. I'm going to embarrass you a couple times today. I just saw that grin, just like, oh no, she's going to start this. So Ernest, James, and Karthik ran DevOps Days Austin, but they also ran Cloud Austin with the help of other organizers. But they weren't the only ones. We had a lot of what I lovingly call lone wolves running a lot of different meetups. We had Lynn Bender, Boyd Hemphill, Lee Calcote, and Everett Toes, and more. Lee and Everett will come in when I start talking about Docker Austin. But Lynn and Boyd ran Austin DevOps in various forms over the past 10 years. Because we had this diverse set of core organizers, we had a culture of support among all of these different community groups. We shared sponsor contacts. We shared speaker contacts. We promoted each other's events at each meetup and at each DevOps Days as well, so that everybody knew exactly what was going on. And then the world changes, but not because of the pandemic. This actually happened earlier. The first one was Lynn moved away, and so we had some shifting there. We managed to survive. And Everett also moved away. Everett, in fact, changed continents, and I'm not sure if he did it on purpose to get away from the responsibility. I don't know, maybe. Lee also disappeared. Then, during the pandemic, Rackspace closed down its office, so we no longer had the meetup space. Boyd also moved away. He burned out and decided to kind of step down. And then Ernest, James, and Karthik decided to also step down and take a break from running DevOps Days Austin, as well as Cloud Austin. And when they took a break, about half of the organizing team in DevOps Days Austin also decided to take a break. So that's where we found ourselves in about 2022. What year was it? 2022. I don't even know what year it is anymore. So with that context in mind, let me talk a little bit about one of my failures. I took over Docker Austin from Everett and Lee because Everett was moving away and Lee kind of just disappeared. And I failed. The community did collapse after about 3 or 4 meetups. It happens. But what did I learn? So for the leader that is stepping down from a community, don't underestimate the power of your network. You probably know a ton of speakers, sponsors, the other meetup organizers in your city. If you don't introduce that new leader to the other people, they're probably going to get stuck, like I did. I wasn't able to keep finding speakers. I couldn't bring good content to the rest of the community. Also, consider if the person who is there, the new leader, actually has any support structures in place. Because Everett and Lee didn't really realize that I needed to get introduced to the local meetup organizers because I was actually new to Austin. I had only been there about a year. I knew no one. And so this whole support structure that they had built up over the past, that was about 7 years, it was gone for me. I didn't know who to reach out to. I didn't know who to go find. So always consider that support structure that you've built up, even if it's informal, that you need to actually put that out there for everyone else. And then finally, you need to make a clear transition. Unfortunately, Everett didn't really tell everybody that I was taking over Docker Austin, so all the emails kept going to him. And he kind of left Rackspace so that email address suddenly was defunct and no one knew how to reach me. So it just didn't work. For the newcomers stepping up, you don't know what you don't know. You need to ask. You need to say, hey, can I have a playbook? Like, can you tell me how do you do this? Even if it's informal. That's really important. I also didn't have that strong enough network to keep my speaker pipelines going, my sponsor pipelines going. And I didn't have anyone else in the community to turn to that I knew of. Now, with Cloud Austin, I know I have a huge community to reach out to. But that's because I've had more time experiencing this. I didn't know how to reach out and find volunteers. I pretty much basically grabbed any racker that was friendly and smiled at me and told them, hey, you're going to come help me with this because you happen to be here. But even then, that's not the best way to find volunteers. Maybe you should look for people who are actually helping first, not people who are like, you know, they happen to catch your eye versus I don't see you, right? And I also didn't have access to that pipeline of communication. So, enough about the failure. How did we succeed? I will tell you that DevOps Days Austin, we survived. we're still here. It's really exciting. We had we actually nearly sold out of our tickets. We had a huge response to our sponsor list and to our CFP, all because James and Karthik and what's his name? Ernest. There's the word I'm looking for. Yay! You all set us up for success. So, some successes that we learned. First things first, they handed off cleanly and they backed up the new leaders. So, what does that mean? They went through and they told sponsors, here's where you go. They told other speakers, make sure you keep having that email address. By the way, whoever said that they want to fix the email, please don't fix it so hard it breaks, because that's really helpful. I'm just telling you right now. I'm going to break it. Clear. So that's extremely helpful to have that backup. But the other thing that they did is they went through and came to the meeting and said, we are handing off the ownership of DevOpsDays Austin. We are handing off these core responsibilities. If you have any questions, direct them to these 3 new folks. Don't direct them to us. But what everybody else didn't know is we had a little 6-person Slack channel so that when Sean and I had a panic moment, we would just go, Ernest, what do we do? Shit. Sorry, pardon my French. So we always had that backup of new leaders. The other thing we did is we paired new people with people who had a lot of experience. So as we set up our organizing team, we had just enough people who have been through a DevOps Days organization before, and we paired them with all the new folks that came on as new organizers at DevOps Days Austin. That was a huge help, especially when we looked at our sponsor list. We had somebody who really knew sponsors, and then we had somebody who had never really done sponsorship before. We paired them together, and it helped kind of get everybody settled. And that way, the next person can also decide to retire if they so choose. Also, James and Ernest and Karthik all were around for questions. And there's a corollary to that. Don't hand off so late that you don't have the energy to actually answer all of those questions. I mean, it's important, right? It's important to hand off while you still have the energy to do so. And I'll get into that in a minute. While maybe you just finished your DevOps Days, maybe you're in the middle of planning your DevOps Days, maybe you're about to run one, like right now, or maybe yours is in the future this year. Write your run books now. Write down, how do you do sponsors? How do you do your CFP? So that the next group of people who come on aren't left with, I don't know what I don't know. They have all of those playbooks in place. And then be bold enough to head in some new directions. DevOps Days Austin has a tradition of changing something every year. We experiment a lot, but don't do too many. We nearly went down that rabbit hole this year. Make sure you keep it roughly the same. Just make a little bit of changes each time. I'm going to quick run through this because I'm aware of my time. For the meetup groups, work as a group. If you are alone running your DevOps Days or a meetup or whatever, find somebody else to do it with you while you have the chance. Don't run it by yourself. I know it's tempting to say, oh, I can do this by myself. But the more volunteers you get, the more people you have to rotate those responsibilities. We're going to hear from someone about organizer burnout. I don't know where you are. Yeah. We're going to be hearing from a little bit about organizer burnout, but this is one of those things. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to rotate those responsibilities. Explore additional ways to reach the community when someone decides to destroy the entire website that we happen to be communicating with most of the tech world with. So external changes are out of your control. We got into a mailing list, and that seems to be helping a ton. And we have Meetup as well for the Meetup, but also for DevOps Days Austin. The mailing list, people are still asking me, how do I get on it? Where is the link? So we're actually working on getting that up on the website soon. Now, change is good. Believe it or not, it's actually kind of important. But to get to that change, you need to help the community go along. Have clear messaging, that consistent handoff, and quiet support for the new leaders that are there. And remember, sometimes A temporary break to get your breath back and letting other people lead for a little while is better than suddenly disappearing forever. Thank you, and I hope we get a chance to talk during open spaces.
Laura? Okay, as we get ready for our next talk, we got a little bit of a moment. One thing I want to talk about with breaks as kind of a thing. So we've got one big break coming up. That said, I think everybody's sort of doing this already, but just, of course, feel free to, if you need to use the facilities, you need to get a drink, a snack, or whatever, please go ahead and do that. We, of course, have coffee and refreshments and everything out throughout, but after a couple more talks, we'll be taking a longer break, which is also then when we will be doing the group photo, and I'm going to come talk to you in just a minute, and we'll figure out exactly how we want to do that. But that said, one other thing, I was remiss earlier. You probably have noticed captions are already happening thanks to white coat captioning. Amazing. Probably more of a thing tomorrow in the much bigger room, but if you can't see the captions and you would like to, if you go to DevOpsDaysShy.org/captioning, you'll be able to load the captions up on your local device there. And I did drop that link in one of the 15,000 channels we created in Slack for this event. So appreciate that. So I am really pleased to welcome our next speaker, who you've already seen once this morning. Wait, it's him, not you. We'll see you in a minute, right? Okay, I got real confused for a second there with which Dutch person was. Yeah. Anyway, I'm very interested to see how this talk goes. Ivo's going to be talking about some different tools and things, and we have been using them for the Organizer Summit and for Chicago this year. And spoiler alert is pretty dope. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Doom himself, Ivo. Thank you.
Let me work this clicker here. The big green button, right? All right. So good morning, everybody. So my name, as I mentioned earlier, is Ivo Van Doorn. This is the thing to know with me. I started my career in being a sysadmin. So worked at a company called McGraw-Hill, then at a social media network called Classmates.com. We spammed the internet for about a decade. And then eventually worked at a company called Chef, where I met some amazing personalities, including Matt himself. I am now actually a former organizer for DevOpsDays Amsterdam. This was my last year. We just organized, we put it on in June. And I said, okay, I think this is like at the top. And there's one thing that I was taught early in my youth is to finish high, not low. And so I was like, okay, this is it. I'm really happy with what we've created. I'm still the nonprofit behind the DevOpsDays cities. So I'm the actual responsible for money for Amsterdam, Ghent, and Eindhoven. So I run all the invoicing, I do all the accounting, all that good stuff. Yep. I'm a member of the global core team, as you saw earlier, and also a co-chair. But finally, and that's probably the most important, I'm a father of 2 girls who are ages almost 5, although she claims to already be 5 and 7. Now, 108,158, yeah. That is the amount that we have spent on Eventbrite since DevOps Days Amsterdam 2012. It's 108,000 euros. In freedom dollars, it's about, depending on who's president and economic situations, it's about $125,000. So these are some of the SaaS costs just for 2022, which is the last time we used Eventbrite. So Eventbrite, we did about 61,000 euros we transacted through Eventbrite, of which we paid Eventbrite $2,800, or 2,800 euros. Being back in the States for the last week, I'm using dollars instead of euros again, but it's euros. Eventbrite for the Netherlands charges 4% per ticket, plus 99 cents for every ticket sold. So it doesn't matter if you are a free ticket or a $0 ticket, still costs us money. You have to pay Eventbrite a euro for you getting a free ticket. That's the 61,000 euros. Now there's also Sessionize, which we spent 451 euros on. It's $499 is the normal price for if you use Sessionize here. And then we also use something called MailChimp, which I had to get rid of the moment they were acquired by Intuit and did not pay their people. So on top of those costs, we also had a lot of limiting features. Over the years, I was dealing with Eventbrite, and Eventbrite had a lot of problems. Now, I had animation set up for this, but I decided to get rid of them this morning. But like one is the quota management. DevOpsDays Amsterdam, we actually have a workshop day that we run before the actual days of our conference. And we actually attract different people. Often we get managers or just professionals that are just for the workshops. They see someone from HashiCorp is in town to do a presentation for DevOpsDays. They also run a session on Terraform, and so that individual just comes in for the Terraform workshop, not for DevOpsDays itself. It's great. Problem is with Eventbrite, it's seen as one global quota. So you can't use the quota management at all. It'll say you sold 1,000 tickets. Yeah, but there's only 200 people coming on the first day. You can't really customize what a badge looks like. That's kind of sad if you want to do something unique to the badge. The check-in, so if you are checking people in, you have to actually have a user account. And so you're sharing a user account across users. I worked at Auth0 for 3 of my years, and I learned a lot what not to do with identity and shared accounts. That's a big no-no. And then really, it comes down to it, and it's in the bottom right there, is Eventbrite forgot who they were actually servicing. They are spending more time on the people looking for events and buying an event versus the people that have to use Eventbrite every single day to manage their event. So they just forgot who their clientele was. And then this is sessionized the last time we used it. If you notice, there's an upward trend. Now, it's really small to see, but it's the plot down at the bottom where it says number 1, and it has so the x-axis is time, and then the y-axis is the session number. So number 1 represents the first session submitted, and number 200 and something all the way in the end is the last session submitted. Notice that there's a correlation that goes like this. Now, what ended up happening is that the sessions that were selected in the bottom were also the most voted on sessions and like sessions in Sessionize. So if you submitted a session to DevOpsDays Amsterdam, say the day before the CFP closed, you did not get your talk accepted, period, because the algorithm would have never allowed it, period. The algorithm prevents, with that many sessions, from actually floating just submitted talks to the front. And so the talks that were voted down below, those are submitted first, and they were voted on the highest. Sessionize cannot math. So instead of Sessionize, consider pre-talks. So pre-talks is an open source written in Django solution that you can both, they have as a SaaS offering, but you can also self-host, more on that later. You can completely customize the session types. There's actually built-in email functionality where you can go after those that were withdrawn or after those that have submitted or not confirmed yet. There's a lot of different ways to engage with the people that are submitting sessions. And then finally, and this doesn't work yet with DevOpsDays, the website, but it has an interactive session builder, which is the first time that we didn't have time problems this year for Amsterdam because I was able to visually make the schedule builder, and then like I extracted that as JSON, did some YAML, blah, and then it came into DevOpsDays.org, but we didn't have any mistakes. It was really nice to actually visually see, like, by room, by time of where everybody was speaking. And also, when you make a change on Sessionize, it'll email the speaker, letting them know of the change. It's like, hey, your talk time has changed or your meeting location has changed. Instead of Eventbrite, or I think it's Tito, I see sometimes come by, consider Pretext. Pretext is being used for Organizer Summit here today. So if you checked in this morning, if you received emails from Matt over the last week, all came from Pretext. The features that it really supports is custom quotas, supports different payment providers, custom badge design, and then your check-in devices, you have a QR code that an admin shows with the device, and then it's logged in. And as an admin, you can then disable that device too. So you have a much better, secure way of handling check-in. So it's like pre-talks, badge, whatever it is. These are not for pre-talks. No. Yes. No. Like the badge it generates in PDF. Thank you, Matt, for that extra detail. So, so why feed the chimp when you can get Listmonk for free? So we're using Listmonk for email, and this is really to announce that, hey, the program is live, or hey, you're a former attendee. So this is people that don't necessarily live in Pretix. These are former attendees, former sponsors, just to let them know that, hey, we're DevOps Days in Amsterdam is coming again, or Eindhoven is coming again, in a time where we can no longer really communicate with our community because the person that has decided to take over the company is destroying the company. Email communication is going to become more and more a thing again until we can get our shit together. Sorry, pardon my French. Our collective know-how together on how to actually start communicating with each other again. If that's Fediverse, we need to figure that out. Someone has to start writing some best practices. But MailChimp, we got rid of, and you can get Listmonk for free. Now, that actually is a good segue in my next, is we also now have social.devops.org, which is Mastodon. It's managed via a GitHub repository called Project DevStodon. That actually shows you how we're standing this entire thing up. Cities are encouraged to register for free. Obviously, it's free. We are not going to do named accounts at this point. So organizers or co-organizers will get named accounts, but it's really the city accounts. And we're really trying to keep it DevOps Days focused. We really don't want photos of your dog going up on our Mastodon instance. Now, let's talk about money. So the cost of Pretix, Pretox, and Listmonk is about 680 euros or 1,680 euros for the entire year. Now, we get a 1,000 euro credit from AWS because we're a nonprofit. So it really comes down to 680 euros. And then for Amsterdam specifically, we had Stripe fees. We were using Stripe, where it's 1,542 euros. And that still seems like a lot. But we process 102,000 euros through the platform, which is almost double than what we were doing with Eventbrite. Finally, and I'm going slightly over my time, I'm sorry, is launching in September. Pretox is going to be available as talks.devopsdays.org, and then Pretix is going to be available as tickets.devopsdays.org. It will replace the existing domains that currently run these instances. If you are already a city using this, such as Detroit, so Rex, wherever you are, I'm well aware of your migration path, it'll be a clean migration path. So it'll redirect cleanly into the right place. This is really to allow any city here, if you are tired of running Eventbrite or CFP, we will offer it to you for free. Yeah. That QR code brings you to the Slack channel called Conference Services on our global DevOps chat. So just so you know where that QR code goes. And that's it.
Thank you, Ivo. As a satisfied customer, as Ivo did say, so we've been running the Chicago/Organizer Summit through Pretox and Pretix. We'd not use Listmonk, but definitely would love to talk about that because, I keep having to send Laura expense reports for MailChimp every couple months, and that's fun. And if you are a conference ops person, Laura now knows how to Pretix for whatever that is worth. So we're doing that. So that's pretty awesome. Before we go into the next talk, a couple just housekeeping things. So I think after, so we're going to have the next talk from Flora, then we'll have my website talk, and then we're going to take a break. I will reiterate this at the time, but just kind of how you know, we're going to, so it's about 11 o'clock. It'll probably maybe be a little bit earlier because we're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is amazing. That doesn't mean that I need to talk a lot, but we will then also be doing the group photo. We'll tell you when you need to be in here and how we're going to do all that, and that'll be awesome. The other thing that we will be doing this afternoon is open spaces. I'm going to do just a little, we'll talk about it again, but just sort of everybody does open spaces a little bit different. So I'll tell you a little bit of how we're going to do it. The actual process of the open spaces, when they happen, we all kind of do the same way, but the sort of selection thing is we will have our usual Post-its and pens. You write your idea on that, and you'll come up here one at a time and be like, I want to talk about why Eventbrite sucks. And we're like, we just had to talk about that. We don't have to have an open space, but no. And then, and we'll have our whiteboard, right? Oh, okay. Well, whatever. We'll figure it out. But there are also one of the things, and maybe we've got a minute or two here, so I'll kind of bring this up. So we're experimenting with our hybrid. There's lots of information in the Slack, but we have different channels for each open space room, so people who are attending and joining us virtually will be able to have some Slack conversation in there, but there's also the Etherpad will be set up, which is kind of live note-taking, and then in each of the rooms, somebody, and I'm not really sure exactly how this is going to work, but we'll figure it out, will have a Slack huddle up on their phone or their device or something, and we'll kind of talk that through. That said, in any of the open spaces as they happen, that group that's in there can elect to, if you want to follow Chatham House rules, if you want to say, hey, this is one that we don't really want to keep notes on or something, we're just going to sort of have to self-organize, but we do ask that everybody's very respectful of if someone's in the room and says, you know what, I'd rather we don't write this on a website that the entire internet can see. Let's not do that. I think it'll be cool. We'll see how this goes. So with that, I would like to, speaking of hybrid, wow, it's almost like I did that on purpose. We'll bring up our next speaker, who is one of the core organizers, organizer of several different Dutch DevOps days as well, who will be talking about how to do hybrid well. And with that, welcome, Floor.
Thank you for that decorative input. How does this work? All right. The green button is the next one, the middle one. Oh, yes. OK, perfect. Hi, everyone. So I want to talk about how to do hybrid because despite us all probably having tried our hands on online events, either organizing ourselves or attending online events, now that we're back in person, largely, we can't really get hybrid to work, and I wonder why, and I want to investigate that together with you and see if we can actually bring some hybrid elements into our events. So I said we, and ironically, PJ couldn't make it in person, and this event wasn't set up to do remote participation, because that would have been perfectly on brand for the talk. But no, unfortunately, that didn't happen, but he did participate in creating the slides, so, you know, sort of, kind of still. And PJ is the senior developer advocate at Spotify. He's a community organizer, does a lot of podcast stuff. You probably all know him. And in DevOpsDays land, he is Buffalo. And then my name is Floor. Yes, that's a real name in the Netherlands. That's what it is. I'm a staff community program manager at Ivan, so I work with Maddie, which is fantastic. I'm a core organizer, and indeed, like, I also organize Amsterdam and Eindhoven, together with a wonderful team. So, like all events and event series globally, we had to all adjust our plans a little bit in 2020, 2021, right? And in some places well into 2022 as well. And a lot of events and a lot of you decided to cancel your event, which is totally valid. But some organizers chose to do virtual event or maybe hybrid event whenever the restrictions in their area loosened a little bit. So as a newly appointed DevOpsDays core organizer back then, I decided to figure out how all of the different teams handled these, challenges by running a survey. And if you responded to the survey, thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. And I sent this survey in November 2022 and got some response on, like, how did the amount of participants change over the years of doing hybrid or online events, and how did we actually, experience that change too. All right. But before, of course, we can talk about hybrid, we need to talk about definitions, because I think everyone's understanding of what hybrid is might be very different. So Maddie believes that for an event to be labeled hybrid, we need to look at the way that attendees interact with the event. And so there has to be a mix of attendees that is participating online, and there should be some people that are in the venue, or if you have different watch parties across those different locations too. And that's only then can we call an event hybrid. If you don't agree with Maddie, I don't know what to say. Like, talk. It's super official because it's on a slide and it has your name on it. All right, so let's look at how events organized in 2020 and 2021, specifically DevOpsDays events. So in 2020, 19 events took place online. Chicago, for instance, used YouTube Live and Discord for general chat, but also for the open spaces. All of the talks, including nights, were pre-recorded professionally, and the speaker would dial in after their session for a little Q&A session. And also in 2020, some organizing teams teamed up together. So you had Amsterdam and Eindhoven team up to bring DevOpsDays online with the N and the L capitalized for the Netherlands. It was cute, sorta. Also, it was the first idea for a name that was offered, and that's what we went with. But also in Turkey, Ankara and Istanbul worked together to bring one event, and then there were several cities in Texas that joined forces too. In 2021, the Amsterdam and Eindhoven combined event was on site, and we had some speakers calling in or sending pre-recorded sessions, but there were also some people there live too, just as the team was, and we had some live chat and breakout rooms available. Tokyo also invited the team and some of the speakers on site and used Zoom and Discord for the event. Porto Alegre in 2021 was a virtual event, used StreamYard and Discord for that, and the audience feedback was really great. A lot of people apparently submitted talks for this event, which they had not really anticipated beforehand. Minneapolis hosted a hybrid event with most speakers presenting live from the venue, and they had a pre-recorded talk in the mix too. All of the talks were streamed on YouTube, and they ran Ignite on stage at the venue, but also live streamed those too. They ran in-person open spaces and also virtual ones too, using Zoom. In Texas, they hosted a virtual event also using Discord for attendees. Talks were recorded or were coordinated via Zoom, also streamed to YouTube. And people just said that the attendees just mentioned that they were really grateful to have some kind of DevOpsDays interaction, and really were just glad for the opportunity. So I think very few people will say that they prefer an online event. Certainly, also looking in this room, I'm pretty sure that you all feel sort of the same about that too. And so when I asked some teams why they had not necessarily thought about bringing in a hybrid event, is, for instance, Portugal mentioned that they didn't feel like they had knowledge to really set it up. They didn't know how it would be perceived for their attendees, because they had the CR experience that whenever they would go to an online event, they would also be sort of working on the side, so it was kind of hard to concentrate, especially when the online event would run a little bit longer. They couldn't really focus anymore. And they thought that maybe the audience felt the same way. Denver decided against organizing a virtual event. They tried a couple of things out, but timelines were kind of like difficult, limiting, and they didn't like any of the platforms that they tried. Tel Aviv did do a virtual event that was sort of combined with other events, so it was one big virtual event, but didn't want to do a hybrid because they thought they were not going to be able to support it, and they felt that the running of a hybrid event, so like really an event next to your in-person event, would be kind of like running two events at the same time, and it's really hard to sync those two up, which is a very valid argument. Indianapolis in 2023, I believe, did not choose to have an online event at all because they wanted to encourage people to be there in person, which is an argument that you hear a lot. So when I asked people through the survey what was the audience sort of feedback that you received, is that it was overwhelmingly positive whenever they did try and host an online or a hybrid event, because they recognized that the organizers were just trying to do their best to adapt to the new situation and still offer some kind of experience for their attendees. Of course, over the course of 2020 and 2021, a lot of organizers made changes to their online events too, because they had tried something out in the first year, like open spaces or Ignites, figured out that it was actually kind of hard to translate those to a virtual kind of like substitute, and then sort of made changes to make it still happen and still feel like a DevOps Days. So for Amsterdam and Eindhoven, the combined event, we tried out a bunch of different things. We did a we did a Kahoot for like a sort of pop quiz. We did virtual bingo. We did an escape room online to try and engage our online audience as well. And some of those things are actually things that we've translated to the in-person events now too. So bingo is now an accepted part of the DevOps Days Amsterdam and Eindhoven events because it just worked really well and people loved it. So Belo Horizonte during the pandemic held different type of events too. So not only their DevOps Days annual conference, but they ran boot camps and tool training and mentoring, all free of charge for their community to try and keep that community engaged. Receive was part virtual, parts in person. They expected around 120 people for that event, which was the same amount of people that they had at their 2019 event, so they didn't really see a decline there either. London event attendees were swapped to virtual tickets if they couldn't make it, and I feel like London really cracked the code of how to do open spaces online. So if anyone wants to learn how to do that, they're probably the right people to ask. Buffalo started at noon with talks on StreamYard. They had a lunch break where everybody could go to the drive-in. They had socially distanced open spaces, which I'm so sad I don't have a picture of because that must have looked hilarious. And they also had a sort of a drive-in to watch the talks on a big screen too. So that's a really fun way to try and figure out how to deal with a new situation. From the survey, there was one quote by a Texas organizer that I absolutely love and I want to share with you, is I believe we're doing our communities a disservice by not continuing to work towards effective hybrid events or coming up with another way to bring the DevOps Days local and or global community to folks who can't or won't join us in person. So what does that mean? I really hope for DevOps Days to create some kind of online component to their events. And that might be, at minimum, maybe a live stream with some live chat that is actually monitored and opportunities for people to interact and ask questions, remote and in person at the same time, so that everyone has the same opportunities. Why? Because very few people actually have the luxury to attend your in-person event. It's always been the case. That pandemic didn't necessarily change that. That's a thing. That's a fact. And there are likely a very different set of people that you would have at your in-person event too. So that those two groups won't bite each other. We all know how valuable hallway tracks are at DevOps Days events. You're going to go to a DevOps Days event if you can go to a DevOps Days event. You're not going to sit at home on your couch and watch that event if you can't otherwise. So it unlocks a whole new audience segment, probably, possibly. Also, maybe we don't want to encourage people to fly out to our events because our planet is really fucked. And it doesn't need to get more fucked, I think. And also, COVID is really not over, despite, popular opinion. And we might not want to cram a bunch of people in one room together. So if you can combine these two, I mean, this is a... I see some uncomfortable, like, how many people are these? There. Reminder, yeah. So it's totally manageable to get a volunteer team to be on top of creating a hybrid experience. And bonus, they don't actually have to be in the same city as you are for the event because it's hybrid. Like, this is an online component, so they could do it from the comfort of their own home. There's many examples of virtual events or hybrid events that are really well done. I wanted to call out quickly because PJ made me. The MatterCon VR experience. So when sometimes it's really applicable to use services because they make sense for your event. So they use the Oculus and special software from Spatial to like bring a conference around VR. So you could sort of live be in this space and talk to people if you came closer to them, and also you could like sort of almost live attend talks whilst not in person live attending talks. And so for a case study for this year, DevOpsDays Amsterdam, we really wanted to create a meaningful online experience alongside the in-person event. We wanted to go beyond just turning on the live stream, which we do always. We wanted to actively engage people, and we wanted to create some more content for our channel as a sort of added bonus, because everything is recorded and edited too. So this is a long list of things that we've considered. Also, that's Chris in makeup. He has a very shiny forehead, so this needed to be met. This is like shiny forehead management is a whole thing. So the check marks don't mean that that's things that we succeeded at, because definitely not. So I want to call out a couple of things. We did do interviews with with our speakers and friends. We recorded those, or some of them were live, and we did those during the breaks of the in-person program. Because if you're at home, you don't care if it's break time, because you will take a break whenever you need to. You know, your coffee machine is there. You can, get your own coffee at the time that you want. You can take a bathroom break whenever you want. Like, you don't need to adjust to the conference schedule. So we wanted to make sure that we would fill up all of that waiting time with stuff that could be useful for an online audience. So that's when we did interviews, which was really fun. And we just sent to the speakers, like, if you want to do an interview, let us know. And all of them wanted to do an interview, and we couldn't. But it was really interesting content. It's all content that is now on our YouTube channel, and it's all like extra marketing stuff, basically. We tried open spaces and an online agile coffee. When open spaces didn't work, online agile coffee also didn't work. Good thing is that we had talks scheduled during the open spaces, so we could just turn on the stream for those ones, and it was solved. We also didn't organize an evening program, although there is definitely things that you can do as an evening program, like the online escape room, or like there's virtual after party options. We decided against it because we would be locked up in the studio already for 3 days, and we really wanted to mingle with the in-person people too. That would be nice. We thought about, as an alternative, to maybe do a selection of all of the pre-recorded, or of all of the talks of previous years, and make sort of like a curated list of our favorite DevOpsDays talks. And I talked about this with people, and they were like, huh, yeah, that would be a really good idea, but with the recordings that we did in previous years are definitely not up to par to be streamed today, resolution-wise and whatnot. So that's actually like an interesting arguments against it, I guess. We too thought about streaming the online version and all of the interviews on the conference floor during the breaks, but ultimately decided against that too, because the people that were in person had more use of slides that would tell you when the next talk is starting, reminder of the code of conduct, other reminders for the evening event. That's relevant information for the people that are in person, and they can watch the interviews later. So that was that was just a better choice. Right, so offering an online experience, reusing some of the elements of your in-person event, but then coming up with some custom content whenever that is appropriate, is very doable, very doable. You can find volunteers excited about setting something up like that, and you will need to attach to your venues or your vendor's AV team early on to figure out what's possible, what you can expect, also budget-wise, and maybe for your next year's event. I love how Ivo is chuckling at it whenever I say budget or anything money-wise. And maybe consider selling the online program as a sponsorship package too. If you normally record or live stream your meetups, if you run those, you might very well be able to recycle or reuse some of the stuff that or equipment that you bought for that Alternatively, I think someone on the Amsterdam team said that DevOpsDays Amsterdam is almost like DevRelCon Amsterdam. So there's a lot of developer relations people that have all of this equipment that could maybe help you out too. So consider that as an investment and start practicing early. But takeaway, it is super doable. Let's talk about it some more. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Floor. I know there was definitely some things towards the end there that I'm sure I saw Kevin sitting back there nodding his head going, uh-huh, uh-huh. But I do want to mention with the stream, so last year in our event, that wasn't really necessarily what I would consider hybrid, but one of the ways we helped contribute to that is, during the breaks and the open spaces and various things, Kevin, who runs our AV. By the way, shout out to Kevin Reedy, who's one of the original DevOpsDays Chicago organizers, runs our logistics and AV and makes all this magic. But yeah, we said let's run some greatest hits and stuff, and definitely ran into. He's like, hey, we're talking. He's like, which talk should we do? And we're like, this one. He's like, oh no, we can't do that one because we recorded that in 2015 when this was different. But one of the things that actually was, I thought, really a little pro tip too is Kevin also was like previously recorded, so when people saw that they could see that this was not new. But sadly, like a couple weeks before our event, Dr. Richard Cook of Adaptive Capacity Labs passed away, and we were able to show his talk, which is one of the best talks we've ever had at our event. So that was really great. Awesome. So I guess it's time for my talk about the website, and the timer's already running, so I guess that means we're going. But that's fine, because it is a quick deep dive into the DevOpsDays website. Now, if you were at Ghent, this talk is going to look a little familiar. I did this at the day 0 in Ghent, but there's a few updates, and maybe you'll read it a little bit differently this time. But, so yeah, my name is Maddie. I work here on Chicago, help out with Core, and as I alluded to earlier, the way that I ended up in Core was creating what you have to deal with today. So I'm sorry, but I'm not, because how many of you remember Webby? Yeah. So, and which is fine, and it was what we had at the time. Maybe it was 7 Ruby versions behind whatever was normal, and so we tried, and it got us to where we are today. So what I want to talk about here is, the point of this talk is to maybe tell you some things about the way the website works. So there's a few reasons. One is to maybe show you some things you didn't know that you could do with it, because there's a bunch of stuff, and documentation is not fun to read. Most documentation is write-only. We all know how that goes, right? Secondly, talk about some of the interesting challenges, because there are some with trying to create what we have, and then also a little bit of a look to the future and maybe kick off some conversations we can have. I am trying to be optimistic. I always say, like, I have this weird cognitive dissonance in my head of how do I put together my belief in the optimism of DevOps and my belief that people are terrible. You are all not terrible. But anyway, what I mean is, I'm very optimistic and stuff, but also we sat in a lot of open spaces in Ghent about 4 years ago and talked about all the shit we were going to do to make this better. And notice I can give the same talk I gave in Ghent in 2019. So let's see what we can do about that. Cool. There we go. Okay, so how does the DevOpsDays.org website work? I mean, it's obviously unicorn magic. But we are using a static site generator called Hugo, which is based on Go. Despite what Katie says, you don't actually have to know Go, but it helps a little bit. A little bit. The Go templating is what it's based on, and that's nerdery unnecessary. One thing to be aware of, let's see, we started this migration from Webby to Hugo 2015, 2016-ish. How Hugo works has fundamentally changed. So there's a lot of stuff if you were to take a look at how it works. And if you're a new Hugo, someone who's new to Hugo in the last couple of years, like Laura, who knows lots of static site generators, looks at this and goes, why the hell did you do it this way? I'm like, because that's how it was back in the day. It is, it's fine. Also, fun fact is Hugo, we make this website do things with Hugo that nobody should ever do. And every time I try to do something, and we'll run into issues, and I get on the Hugo forums, and people are always like, Why? And I'm like, because we do. So anyway, it's fine. So he's a static site generator. If you're unfamiliar with static site generators, what this fundamentally means is we put the Wayback Machine that takes us all the way back to the old web when it's just a bunch of, at the end of the day, it's a bunch of HTML files, which is cool. It means it serves it up fast, means we are relatively safe from security problems and stuff like that. But you have to generate this output, right? Cool. We are hosted using Netlify. Shout out to Netlify. Awesome. And it's what we use for our build, but that's actually where the website is hosted, is using their global CDN. And also discovered today when looking at something that they're taking some features away, and we have to work on that, but that's okay. I don't think it'll be a problem. Cool. And all our deployments, everything is run through GitHub. In the past, we had builds that things with Circle. We did some stuff, actually way back in Travis. Everything is basically handled through GitHub Actions and Netlify and their builds and stuff like that. But the point is, GitHub, source control, it's like GitOps, except I understand that's not what GitOps means, but whatever, right? Anyway, everything goes through source control. Fun fact, one great quote I've heard from Jess Humble in the past, he said, version control is a communication tool for developers, and I think that's very true in our place here. So basically what happens is when you submit a PR into the DevOpsDays web thing, it kicks off something called a deploy preview. This is an amazing feature and actually what brought us to Netlify, and I'm pretty sure like every build system in the world has this now, but it was new at the time, and shout out to Jess Frizzell, who's the one who told us about this. But what's awesome about this is this deploy preview basically runs it, and you can just look and say, this is what it would look like. That matters a lot to those of us that have to merge your PRs because we can do a very quick check and not have to build it local and do all that stuff. It's pretty amazing. Slide's out of date because it says master branch, should say main. But anyway, whatever gets merged to main is what gets shipped to prod, which means that's what's hosted on Netlify. That's as easy as it goes. This is all driven by YAML and Markdown. So that's how these things all work. And there's, yeah, is that what it is? Cool, awesome. We can all should post about YAML some other time. And there's all sorts of stuff inside of it. It's using Bootstrap as its front-end framework, and it's a pretty, not a pretty old version, but a slightly old version of Bootstrap, but that's totally fine. We use SCCS for the style sheets, which is why it's hard if you're ever like, I just want to change the style sheet. I'm like, ain't that easy, sorry. And we use Font Awesome, also kind of an older version, but it's all working. These are all things that we can fix. But anyway, cool. So, wrong button, Maddie. Shoot, did I just break it? There we go. Oh, okay. Oh, I was using the pointer. Okay. Anyway, cool. So this is about deploy previews. Again, very revolutionary when we talked about this in Get in 2019. But it kind of looks like this. So you'll see if you've seen a PR, when you'll see there's the deploy preview, and it'll say click on the details. That will then launch the site. It won't look, there's a couple minor idiosyncrasies that happen in a deploy preview, mostly just how the front page looks, and actually, yeah, so anyway, but that's really cool. They are super awesome, and, would launch in a URL like that, cool, whatever. There we go. Okay, so I know you have ideas. I know everyone's like, all right, Maddie, here's how we can make this better. Let me tell you, why aren't you doing X? Why doesn't the site do Y? Why doesn't it do this? So let me tell you about our constraints. So before I even go into this block, one thing you need to think about, and this is how I reason about this, is imagine an open source project that has dozens upon dozens upon dozens of contributors who touch the project once a year. And you have to be able to, and you can only assume that your contributor has two things, Git and the Hugo binary. That's it. That's all you get. No pun intended, because we don't know, and we don't want to put a lot of constraint on you as a contributor to say, well, it's fine, but make sure you have Yarn installed in this version of Node, and why aren't you using this and this and this? And you go, we don't want to do that. So that's all we have. Now we've learned some things along the way, and things have gotten improved. It's cool. But what about Node? What about Node? Okay, nope. Yeah. But seriously, Node would make this easier. I know. It's too bad. Because managing things. Now, there are, again, as we look at this in today, on Beyonce's internet in 2023, we can probably make some of this stuff a little bit easier, and we might talk about that in a second. So those are the constraints that we have, among others. There we go. Some cool features that you might not know, though, because again, there is extensive documentation of these. I also don't expect you to read all of it. But I will tell you that, and I might have this in a later slide, but if you ever want to know all the cool shit you can do with the DevOps, like every single possible feature that exists, go take a look at the Chicago version, because I use all of them. So you can be like, okay, it's sort of like the demo of that, right? So a couple things, you can do this. You can make a custom header backend, right? That's a thing. That's been there for a long time that you could do that. And the Chicago one has looked like that since the beginning that I did it. But it's kind of a nice little thing, because normally if you usually see the blue, but hey, maybe you want to have something a little bit more styled. Because also everybody wants to make it look super pretty. There's limitations of how pretty you can make it, but there's some prettification. Ooh. This, I didn't update because I think Google Analytics is changing. So this might not be 100% accurate. We might have to fix this. But what you can do is if you have your own Google Analytics and you want to track your own stuff and everything like that, you have the ability to stick your own UA in there. But I don't think that's how Google Analytics works anymore. And we might have to fix this, but whatever. The theory was there. I will tell you that people want this, generally speaking, and almost nobody ends up looking at it anyway because it doesn't really matter. So, but that's fine if you want to. It exists. As again, someone who has, I can't tell you the last time that I looked at that. But we do look at some of the analytics. We actually look at some Netlify analytics. We have Netlify analytics, which on the site as well, and we'll talk about that in a minute about why that's useful. Oh, okay, there's how to do the thing. You can create a custom social sharing image. So this is, open graph image. This is like, hey, when you put a URL up on, Meltdown of the Week social website, put it in Slack, put it wherever, it's that unfurl image. You can create one that is across your whole event, like in this case would have been for Chicago 2019. We've done some other ones that look a lot prettier in the last couple of years that Margaret created because she was better at this than me, but this is what's on my slide. If you don't, I'm sure we've all seen it before, there's sort of a standard one, so it's not like you have to do it, but this is great branding. This is a great thing. And you can actually do it on a page-by-page basis. Where this comes up a little bit more, this doesn't work 100% the way you might expect it all the time, but where this is powerful is for your speakers. So for example, if you wanted to see this, if you go to the 2023 Chicago site and you go look at any of the speaker pages or talk pages, the social image is a social card of that talk and that speaker. And this is all really great promo stuff, and when you want to get your speakers to be able to do it and all that. So this is a kind of a helpful thing to do that I'm a big believer in, especially as a conference speaker. I like to make it easy for our speakers to be able to promote the shit out of my conference. And if you want people to do work for you like that, you want to make it as easy as possible. Oops. There we go. Okay, so one of the other things, too, is you can, after your event, you can make some updates to both the individual talk page and also the program page. So if we take a look at this talk from Heidi at Chicago, you can see that the video is there from the talk once we had the video, as well as the slides are there. And then you also can see it also shows up on the program page with those little icons so you can see where that goes. We support, this is done, you don't have to put in like the embed codes or things like that. If you have the YouTube, like I think for the video we might only support YouTube, I'm not sure, but at this point I think that's pretty much everything. Is anybody using Vimeo besides the fact that we have a DevOps Days account with Vimeo that costs us money and is impossible to migrate? But the slides we support, SlideShare, a whole bunch of other stuff. It makes it pretty easy. This is really great because, and then people can go back and take a look. We try to make it as easy as possible for that. This is another one, and this is going from what used to be a gentle, please don't do it this way, to a please do what we're asking because of a problem. So we have a separate repo that's called DevOpsSays Assets, and this is for quote-unquote large binary file, right? And large at this point means probably anything that's not a reusable image is the thing. And the reason is because our repository is too damn big, right? How many people have cloned that repo? Right, it's rough. I actually had to do the git, okay, it's just I'm just gonna blow it up. And if you're wondering why the venue map is not on the program page for the Organizer Summit today, it's because I started cloning the repo at my hotel and had to come here instead, and I didn't get a chance to finish it. So what you do in this separate repo called DevOpsDays Assets, you put your image file there, and then you can link to it. We've documented this. We're actually, some additional contributors with myself, we got some stuff in process to actually do some checks so that when you do your PRs, if there's a file like that, it will actually fail on the check and say, hey, can you please do that? And I believe we've also have some PRs staged up that will do a lot, that already will have we're migrating the stuff over there. That happens without you having to worry about it. But this just makes life easier for everybody, except for you who is like, I just want to put the damn PDF in the folder, Maddie, but that's fine. Okay. We're using the owner's file, which is a fun GitHub feature that says if certain files are touched, we have kind of a different flow for that, because these are some files that can kind of jack everything up, maybe. So one of the things to remember is you're all sort of living in your own little microsite, but there's also parts that you could do a thing and it could maybe impact a lot of other people. So we try to put the code owners around it, which puts it through a different thing. But for example, all the fun things, like first of all, the git ignore itself, and the theme files and all those things. It doesn't mean you cannot PR against those files, but we have it so that we will get a separate set of eyes on that, and we'll pay a little bit more attention to it in theory. Cool. Anyway, that's fine. Okay, now it's 2023. Use the goddamn cloud, right? So this is something we started to remember when I talked about. We can't assume what you have. And also that repository is freaking huge. And also the build sometimes, depends on what version of Hugo you have installed. By the way, we're always lagging a little bit, and Hugo likes to break shit underneath me because we're still doing things in like a 10-year-old way of doing it. And some of us use Hugo for other things, and we're like, no, I can't pin back to 3 versions ago, Hugo. And yes, there's all sorts of ways we want to make it easy. So we started an experiment a little bit ago using Gitpod, which is, if you're not familiar, is also similar to like GitHub Codespaces. And by the way, tomorrow, Rizal Scarlett will be giving a talk here at Chicago all about the democratization and equality of containerized workflows and things like this. The idea here is that you can do this all in your browser. You will not have to have Hugo. You don't have to do anything on your local machine. So, you launch this open in Gitpod, and then you get basically equivalent of Visual Studio in your browser. And here's the cool thing that's happening over there. That's your local preview. It's happening right there as you work. Now, it's not like the easiest thing in the world, right? And my docs are out of date, partially because it was kind of hard for me to write some of them because I have commit bits on the main repo, so the permissions I had to do and stuff. But this is, how many people have used the Gitpod implementation on? Cool. More than me. Well, I do a little bit, but hopefully and we can get to make this better. This will make your life a little bit easier. So this is a nice little feature we have there. Here's a couple, what I say, pro tips if you're using the site. We also have utility scripts. So we have these, what Bridget likes to call minimum viable bash, that will go when you sit there and you say, hey, I want to create the 2024 version of Eindhoven or whatever. Do not just take your folder from last year and just copy it and rename it. That will mostly work, but except when it doesn't, right? So this will, because what this does is if we ever change some defaults or some features, we always update it into the script. So you'll make sure that it's the most up to date as well, and because things change. There also are utility scripts around adding sponsors, renaming, things like that. Again, just test it. Hopefully we're making this better. There is a file called reference.md. It is comprehensive. But every single, probably almost every single possible field on every type of page is referenced in there, as well as references to the short codes and a bunch of other stuff that you can do with it. Please check that out. Again, remember the part when I said this is a bunch of contributors who do this once a year. So you can always say, always rebase before starting up after a while. To be honest, what you really should do is just blow that shit away and just reclone it is your safest thing. You can do this. It's just going to probably annoy you more through that. But I cannot tell, how many people in this room have commit bit on DevOpsDays Web and merge PRs? How many have seen that fun, 17 bajillion commits come in this PR because someone hasn't touched it in a year? Totally fine. So And also we have in Slack, there is the website channel. This is a great channel. First of all, if you need eyes on a PR, again, as we've talked about, maybe it might take a minute to get to it, but this is the best place because both community help from each other who are good at doing this to help each other and the folks who can help with that. So you're like, why the hell should I put it on the DevOpsDays.org? I can make an awesome website. This is stupid. I should just make DevOpsDaysChicago.com. Oh. Okay, there we go. That's cool. That's good. All right, cool. So a couple of reasons. So SEO is a thing, and you know what helps SEO? Having a domain for a long damn time. So you know what ranks better than anything else you have out there around DevOps Days is DevOpsDays.org. Sometimes, to your detriment, history matters. Here's something. So a lot of times, and I'm not naming names or whatever, but let's say I create DevOpsDaysChicago.com, and this is where I live the whole time. And I put up all this stuff, and now I'm going to do a new event next year, and I delete all that shit. And now whatever happened to last year? Wherever did that go? So we do have a long history of things that have happened because of that. And again, I know it is not the fanciest or the prettiest, and it doesn't have all the beautiful features because most of the people who help run this website are on the ops side of DevOps. But a lot of what's built is for ease of the larger community connection of that. And then again, I will tell you, almost everybody makes the speaker experience shitty, right? And I will pick on Sessionize. Sessionize has a cool program. Sorry, I'm not looking directly at you, except that I am. I didn't mean to. But I am a conference speaker occasionally. I want to be able to promote my talk at your event. I want to be able to do all that stuff, and I want a link that goes right to my talk, not some interstitial bullshit that's in there, and then I have to do that. So guess what? Again, DevOpsDays.org, designed primarily and tested and critiqued by myself and Bridget Cromhout, another conference speaker. So a lot of it is built for that. Anyway. And if anything, maybe you could do like what we do. So for DevOps Days Chicago, we have DevOpsDaysChi.org. We use that domain for other things. That domain just redirects right to that. So if you want to have them nice and easy, the other thing is you may or may not know this is a thing, but DevOpsDays.org/ your city name will, yes, we're fine. We got 10 minutes. Okay, a couple things to fix. Yes, we know. Repo's too damn big. Yes, we know. We don't really support multi-track very well. That may be some opinionated stuff filtering through, but we understand it's a scenario we can be better about this. We do not support multilingual. This is something we've been talking about for a while, is actually very important. And the build should be faster, could be faster. Those are things. Hey, this we fixed! And you do not know. What's crazy is we fought this thing in the weirdest non-reproducible bug forever, and I can't remember if you're in the room and you're the one who fixed this. Who was it? I don't remember. Someone in one of the cities, I wish I remember the name, was just like, what if I think it's just this? And we went, oh, shit. So what used to happen, if you don't remember, is that just sometimes the front page would just put them in weird order. So yeah, it kept getting worse and worse because the more there were. Okay. I'm so close to being done. Don't worry about it. It's cool. Oh, and yes, again, I suck at front end, a lot, okay? So again, this is why it's also very functional. Also, because I'm hoping she's watching, we did hire a designer when we first redid this, and Bridget did strip out a lot of it because Bridget wants a website that just works and is function over form is where that. I don't completely disagree, but yes, we have things to do. So maybe things might change. We're going to see. I will say, we've looked at this before, about why don't we just use a CMS? One thing, a lot of these things that are super good, you know how they're charged? Per seat. How many DevOps days did you see on Floor's thing? Also, remember when the core was talking earlier and talking about when you were bringing new people on, onboarding, offboarding, these things have become challenging. We're looking at different things about that, and actually one of the reasons that Kat Cosgrove is here is she's helping us out try to figure some of these things out. We're going to definitely do open spaces about this later today and see what we can do. So do you think you have ideas? You have stuff? Let's have some open spaces this afternoon. Let's talk about it. Thank you very much for listening to this, and I will go ahead and bring us into the next part of what we're doing. So Dan was sitting, Frosty was sitting there, and he's like, it's time to go, it's time to go. And I'm like, we seriously like have 10 minutes. So, but thank you. Yes. And it was like, oh, that's right. And it was, seriously, it was the funniest thing. We're like, oh, it's this. And we had like super awesome Go developers we know in the community were doing this and looking, and we're like, what? Nobody could figure out. It was just like this little thing. So anyway, community matters. Cool. Here's what we're going to do now. So it's time to go into our break. So go off and have a break. Please, at 11:30, which is in 40 minutes, 40, lots of time, we will be taking a photo in here, a group photo. We will be taking the photo at 11:30, not starting to come in here and figuring it out at 11:30. So please be in here ready to, and Kambua, our wonderful photographer, we're going to set up, we're going to figure this out. It'll give us some time, but please go get yourself a snack, use the facilities, talk to each other, stretch your legs, and we will see you all in about 30 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, it's going to be a really tight squeeze. You may have to like love each other.
Had a good little break there. Good job on the group photo. Wow, did that go well and quickly. So whoever had the over-under on less than 5 minutes of getting the photo done, you made some money. So we've got a few more talks this next block here, and then we'll go into lunch, followed by our open spaces. One thing I'll just share is our friends at DevOpsDays Boise have an event coming up shortly and are kind of in a bad bit of a way. So if your DevOps Days has a little extra scratch, could loan/give, maybe loan, maybe give. See Julie. But there, I think we've all been in that place and we've all helped each other. And actually, a little bit of a shout out to our Austin friends who actually seeded the very first DevOps Days Chicago in 2014. To put things in perspective, and this is a fun flashback for Kevin who helps with our logistics, we had to borrow $5,000 for a venue deposit. Wow, that was fun when that was. But that was in the same building, but it wasn't nearly as nice or as awesome. And also, can we get a shout out for our awesome venue folks at Convene who've been super great for us? So thank you. And tomorrow's going to be even crazier. But good deal. All right, so our first talk, kicking us off after the break, we have two organizers from DevOps Days London. We have Paula and Hannah, who are going to teach us some lessons learned. So welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Oh,
Hi.
We're not used to this enthusiasm. We're very English. So people in England don't generally respond. So, hi.
Oh, clicker.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. The green button. Okay. So, I'm Paula.
And I'm Hannah.
We are from DevOps Days London. We are going to share some lessons learned / mistakes that we've made over the past few years. So strap in, because this is going to be a bit challenging. But Hannah and I have been part of the DevOps Days London community since 2017. This is actually a photograph of the day we met. So we were in a pub in London, and we'd been brought together by some of the core organizers, although not some of the core that are here, but some other core folks reached out, and they were looking for people to help out with DevOps Days London. So we met in the pub with these other lovely folks, and we'd never met each other before, and we'd never run a conference before. So we were very young and very enthusiastic, and maybe just a tiny bit naive.
Yes, so 2017 was the first conference I'd ever been involved with, and wow, did I underestimate the amount of work it was going to be. That year, I managed sponsors, I managed the venue, and I took care of catering, which is a lot for one person who's never done it before. So DevOps Days London became like a second full-time job for me that year. As the point of contact for the sponsors, I had to handle a very difficult situation that year with one very, very angry sponsor. 2017 was the year we had to eject a sponsor for abusive and threatening behavior towards our volunteers. Yeah, as a non-profit, community-led, practitioner-focused conference, I don't need to preach to you in this room, we didn't meet their expectations on facilities like lead gen tools and badge scanning. The sponsors' event team, of course, knew all about that. They'd been talking to me in the lead up to the conference, but one of their key stakeholders wasn't aware. And they were very disappointed and very angry when they showed up at the venue, and they were very determined to let us know how they were feeling. I personally had a very nasty confrontation with the individual in question as they were being escorted out of the building, but thankfully we had provided a quiet room, which was a nice little space for me to go and have a cry after that, after that nasty incident. But on the positive side, I took some learnings away from that incident. And I was really determined for the DevOps Days London in the future, I would set expectations correctly with our sponsors and attract the right kind of sponsors who were there with the right intentions to engage with the community. So we've made some improvements, and those continue to this day. We have contracts now. We didn't in 2017. So they outline exactly what is included and not included in the sponsorship packages. We provide FAQs ahead of time, which allow organizers for the sponsors to self-serve things like screens and to take care of shipping without having to go through us every time. We also include a lot of detail about how they can get the most out of the event, and we make a lot of reminders about what we provide and what we do not provide so that we avoid disappointment like that in the future. These messages, as well as our code of conduct, are then reinforced on the day with a sponsor briefing, and we also leave a printed guide for each of our sponsors on their sponsor stand so that they have no excuse for not understanding what the event is about and that we have a code of conduct.
So, we learnt some lessons in 2017, but overall, despite the sponsor issue, it went pretty well. So we thought we'd do it again in 2018. And at this point, we were still very enthusiastic. We were still pretty confident that we knew how to do it now. And so on we went. But then some other things went wrong. So day one, registration desk, we had some very lovely volunteers helping us out, getting all the attendees through the door as fast as possible. And these were people who had, we'd asked for volunteers and they'd volunteered, and we were like, brilliant, these people are going to help us. But whilst the volunteers were very kind in giving us their free time, we didn't really explain some things very well to them. And so even though they were doing their best and were very polite, we ended up in a situation where we had our pronoun stickers laid out, but our volunteers then were kind of looking at people and then handing them the pronoun stickers. And one of our volunteers was so polite, but he then kept addressing people as sir or madam whilst handing out the stickers. And it was with the best of intentions, but it just really wasn't what we were aiming for at all. So that was an issue. We had a sign language interpreter for the event, and the person was signing all morning, and then in our coffee break, we had a discussion about whether anyone was benefiting from it and whether the sign language interpreter should just call it a day. If it wasn't really helpful, then they could finish early. And so after the break, one of our organizing team came up on stage and then just asked verbally, without the interpreter, would anyone like the interpreter to stay? Which also wasn't ideal. And then we also, some people got a bit drunk at the after party.
I've got no idea who you mean.
I mean, I'm not here to name and shame, but one of the things we have struggled with is trying to make the evening event less alcohol-centric and more inclusive to people who don't drink for any reason, people who don't drink. And so we learned the importance of that in 2018. So what have we done differently? Well, with regards to the sign language issue, after someone had pointed out to us like the error of our ways, we apologized kind of clumsily to the audience, but we apologized on the day. With regards to our volunteers, we now select volunteers that we know and trust, and we do a volunteer briefing. So we really try to set out very clearly all of the things that we're doing at our registration desk, why we do them, and the importance of it. And then for our evening event, we've added in board games. So we have a whole area which is more inclusive. It's not really focused around the alcohol. People can come, and it's a nice way to meet people and get to know people and get involved in games. So it's a little better.
So our third edition as an organising committee, 2019, was actually a pretty good year. I think things ran really quite smoothly. We expanded our organising committee so there wasn't such a heavy burden of workload on just a few people, and we almost nailed it, apart from the drinks order. So in a rush, I didn't review the quantities of beer and wine on the venue ordering form, and we ended up with a drinks reception that ran out of beer almost immediately. The DevOpsDays crowd, apparently, they want their beer and they're not so interested in wine and soft drinks. But to be honest, like we said, it's quite challenging to run an evening event that isn't centered on drinking, isn't centered on alcohol. And if people didn't have the quantity of beer that they really expected, it's probably not a huge issue. So then, our most recent edition, 2022, after a couple of years hiatus, DevOpsDays London returned. We returned at a different venue. Unfortunately, the cancellation process for the 2020 conference was really quite difficult, and we lost a lot of money as part of that. And so we didn't really feel good about going back to our original venue. And it's not a coincidence that the year we changed our venue is also the year that we started very late in the morning. You couldn't see the slides that were projected. We offered a live stream that did not work until halfway through the morning, and the Ignites just simply went no. We had to move them until after lunch so that we could resolve the AV issues around the Ignites, and we ate into our afternoon open spaces time. You simply cannot run a tech conference at a venue that isn't equipped with the technology you need. It was cheaper, but there was a reason for that. 2022 also was the year that a speaker gave a very thinly disguised sales pitch. And this was the first time this had happened to us. Despite our successes in building diverse, balanced, and really thought-provoking schedules, 2022 was the first time that a sales pitch slipped through our CFP process. And we've all been in this type of talks before. We've been to conferences that, are primarily this type of talk, to be quite honest, and it's boring. It's insulting to our attendees, it reflects poorly on our conference, and it makes the speaker look really silly as well. So we've learned some lessons that we're going to take forward into 2023. We've gone back to our original venue. Rather than experiment again with a third venue and take the risk of more AV issues, we've gone back to a venue that we have worked with year on year, where we're confident of the service they provide. The stress that it creates when the AV goes wrong is just not worth the money that we will save. And we've also been more cautious about the speakers we select. We've done more research about our shortlist before we made a final decision about our schedule. We don't know yet whether we've been successful in filtering out the sales pitches, but hopefully.
Okay, so that's a quick summary of the events that we've run for the last, well, we've done 4 editions. This will be number 5 this year. And we've talked about some of the specific incidents that have happened. But what else have we learned in the last few years? For us as an organizing team, being inclusive and making our event accessible is absolutely critical for us. It's the thing that we really, really focus on. But what we've noticed is even though we try to have a very representative lineup of speakers, where we're still struggling is in our audience and our kind of diversity of our audience. And that's despite the amount of efforts that we do. So we reach out to local meetups. We offer free childcare. We try to make open spaces welcoming. We have gender neutral bathrooms. We try to do lots and lots of different things, but we're still not really moving the needle. Now this, one thing we don't do, I don't know if other events do this, one thing we don't do in our speaker registration is actually ask any questions about how you identify gender, race, sexuality. We don't really ask those questions, so it's very hard for us to track. So these stats that you see are based really just on guesswork of first names. So they're very loose, don't pay too much attention to the numbers, but it was just, I was curious to have a look at our ticketing system and be like, roughly, do I think we're getting better? Do I think we're getting worse? And you can see, despite all the things that we do, and we really pride ourselves on trying to make as many kind of efforts as we actually can, we're not really increasing the diversity of our audience, at least by gender. I mean, it's impossible to tell by any other measure, and like I said, this is pure guesswork based on boys' names and girls' names, but it's still not really improving. We're not 50-50 or anything like it. So that makes us quite sad, but it also makes us really strive for doing better. Like, we still need to do better. We know we need to do better. We're still trying to come up with ways to do better. So if there's an open space later about how to attract more people into your audience, I think that would be an interesting open space to have.
So we're coming back again this year, 2023, in September. So what can you look forward to if you're coming along to DevOps Days London? And I think that you all should. We're always looking for ways to improve. And actually, it's hard to believe that this year is our 10-year anniversary in London. which is really exciting. And so what we're doing is we're bringing the whole DevOps Days crowd back together. So everyone who's acted as an organizer and been on the committee for DevOps Days London since it began 10 years ago, we're going to get together in London and we're going to have a panel session about what DevOps and what DevOps Days has meant to us over the past decade. So to wrap up, despite all the things that have gone wrong over the years, the hard work that we've had to put in and the occasional tears, I'm so, so proud of what we created with DevOps Days London. We'll never stop trying to improve, and that's what makes this community and this wonderful group of humans so special. I'm sure everyone in this room has their own horror stories and lessons that you've learned along the way. So let's share that this afternoon in the open spaces and spend the afternoon learning from each other, because at the end of the day, that's what DevOps Days is all about. Thank you, everyone, for having us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, just put the clicker there. Oh, hey, Kevin, remember earlier you told me to drop the HDMI cable and I didn't do it? Sorry. I figure that got handled. Awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah and Paula. Our next speaker is probably known by many of you, especially if you run a US-based DevOps Days. I'm sure she will introduce herself, so I'm not going to give it all away, but Laura Wickett runs Conference Ops, which there's many, many DevOps days in this country that would not be anywhere near successful, forget successful even possible without Laura. She's joining us today. We'd love to have her here. We at Chicago always love to bring her and James in to come to our events because we appreciate them so much. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what Laura has to say. So no further ado, Laura Wickett.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everybody here. Am I on? Managing finances. Everybody wants to talk about money, right? Collecting money. Raise your hand if you've had to chase down long-paying invoices, had to ask sponsors for money. If you haven't, you need to hug the sponsor person on your team because they have. It's definitely a problem that we all, the big green one. Got it. Navigating sponsorships is definitely one of the most challenging areas of DevOps Days, as everybody here knows. I started running Conference Ops in 2013. It started a long time ago when Patrick Dubois needed some help with the US-based events that he was involved in here. And so I stepped in with that. I've helped over 120 events. And I love this community. Like, I really appreciate how y'all have just welcomed me in as a partner. I look at myself as a partner for your events, and so I'm really happy to be here in that capacity as well. I'm based in Austin. I might say y'all. Apparently the French say y'all, the Dutch say y'all, so I'm in good company there. A little bit about what I do. I handle basic accounts receivable, accounts payable services, take care of your invoices for your deposits. I invoice the sponsors and handle all of that. I really see myself as an advocate for your team. I follow up on payments. I help you chase down sponsors. I take care of all that behind the scenes stuff for you. Y'all have enough to deal with, right? Like, you have to pick speakers and deal with venues and catering, and we try and make that as smooth as possible. Everybody here has full-time jobs. There's sponsors that need things, and if I can answer questions, I'll step in and just keep the conversation moving along. And then I also just smooth out the onboarding process so that our payments come in. Sometimes it's as easy as linking a Bill.com account, and sometimes it takes an hour of paperwork, and I'm sure y'all know who those companies are. I've already traded 9 emails this morning with somebody else I'm just trying to get paid for for the Dallas event that's in 2 weeks. So in addition to like what I do, I know that not everyone here is from the US, and so I can't work with you. I know not everyone is one of my customers, but I want to give you some resources that you can use moving forward so you can help these conversations, both with collecting sponsorship payments and communicating with sponsors. Long payment cycles are a pain. We can't do net 45, we can't do net 30. Sometimes people want to join your conference and it's a week away, and we need to get paid now. But I just want to remind you, it's the marketing person that is on your team. There's internal processes they have to work at too, and so it's not personal. They're not out to get you. They don't hate that they have to pay you tomorrow. They just have to work within their company. So we can also work with them to work with us, and we'll get to that. And one way we do that is we wait to provide sponsorship benefits. I'm pretty sure this is established across DevOps Days, but just in case it's not, like, it's really important. If the marketing person is excited to set up their booth, they're excited to get the logistics in, they're ready to get going, they have no idea that invoice hasn't been paid in 2 months and that you've been waiting and holding their spot. And so when you hold off on those benefits, you don't send them the information they need, all of a sudden they're like, what do you mean it hasn't been paid? Why can't I have that information? I need it now. And so what happens is they become an internal ally. They are now working with you to get finance to pay that invoice. It has their support so you can keep going with the process, but also a lot of times what happens is that marketing person CCs me or your team on an email to finance. Well, guess what? I have the finance email now. I can contact them directly. And next year when they don't pay, I can contact that same email again. So it really creates this really great triangle of working the whole process, and your marketing people are now on your side because you are also helping them get through their process as well. There's a waiting game, and sometimes you send a sponsor an invoice and you don't hear back. There's a couple reasons. Sometimes it's part of the planning process. If you have an invoice out that goes out end of the year, maybe January, it's part of their brainstorming planning, and maybe it doesn't get approved. But sometimes they just have a really long payment process. So if you add them to a list, what happens is you don't sell out the sponsorship from underneath them. It's really tempting to say, well, I've had this invoice out to this sponsor for the last 3 weeks, month, 6 weeks, and someone else wants to pay me tomorrow or right now with this credit card. It really burns bridges if you just sell the sponsorship and say, well, too bad, they didn't get through. Well, your marketing person on that long-paying company, they have been working their butt off to get the invoice paid, and now you just said, well, too bad, I'm sorry. So make sure that you add those outstanding invoices to a list. Don't just sell the space out. You can help your team if you're the one managing this internally with your team to be patient. Sometimes we think, oh my gosh, that person hasn't paid and it's been 7 days. Like we've invoiced them 7 days ago. Sometimes it just takes a little bit longer than 7 days. So you can kind of manage your expectations with that as well. And then if a sponsor goes completely dark, you might have to send additional information. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But just some things you want to keep in mind as you're talking to sponsors. Don't turn to an accusation. Remember, it's not personal. They're going through processes too. But do create some sense of urgency so that they will move the process through. Don't create false urgency, though. Don't create this pressure timeline where you say, hey, our sponsorships are almost sold out, and really half of them are still available. Like, you don't want to make things up, especially if you say something like that and they come back to you maybe a week out or 2 weeks out from the event, you still have 2 spots left, and they think you've sold out because you put all that pressure on them previously. So just communicate very clearly and don't try to stir things up. And then do ask for a response. Don't put an email, hey, I'd love to hear back from you. Looking forward to hearing from you. It's like, they'll get to you when it's convenient then, and that might be in a month. So create some sort of time frame for them to respond or ask a specific question they can answer. Asking for money is really hard. Like, everybody like asking for money. I wanted to create some sample questions that you can use that removes the emotion, removes the weight, removes it from being this really heavy thing where you're like, oh my gosh, you have to pay your bill. Why haven't you paid us yet? I actually learned this in a sales training years ago, and it served me. I've crafted it and changed it as we need for DevOps Days, but it's been really helpful. The first one is, what is the status of payment? It's pretty open-ended. Another way to ask that is, when can we see the payment come in? Sometimes they pay bills or cut checks only on the first Thursday of every month, and maybe we send the invoice to them on Friday of that month, and we have to wait. So oftentimes you'll get a response that says, oh, it's going out in our next run on Wednesday, and they'll respond, and then you have an idea of what to expect. Do you need any additional information to move forward with payment? In the US, we have a lot of forms, like a W-9 form that they require. Maybe they want to pay by ACH instead of credit card or vice versa. And that way you kind of are offering help in the process for them as well. This is one way to create urgency too. Chicago just went through this recently. We're printing banners. We'd love to include your logo. Can you pay us so we can get it done? And then do you still plan on sponsoring DevOps Days? We have only 2 spots available, honestly, when it's like down to 2 spots. And we don't want you to miss out. And look how nice you are looking out for them. You don't want them to miss out on this opportunity. That's so kind of you to try to sell them your last 2 spots. Like I mentioned, when sponsors go dark and they have an invoice out, you can't just like let it go. You can't just go, oh, we'll just forget about them and take money because like, that payment may come in and then you're oversold. And that has happened. But you do have to send an email. You can't just ghost them, especially if you have an invoice out. So here's a sample email of something you can use. We would love to have you join our DevOps Days event, but we haven't heard from you in a couple of months, weeks, day, whatever you want to put in there. We've been holding your sponsorship while the invoice has been out, but we are no longer able to do this. Could you please pay the invoice by Friday if you plan to attend? If we do not receive payment by then, we will move on to the next company on our wait list. A couple of things to note. 1, keep a wait list. 2, put a date in there. You put a date like Friday, that means that Friday comes and goes and you are free. You have communicated to them, Friday's gone, moving on. And they have record of it and you can refer back to it if you need to. If you want to take a screenshot of this, you can copy it, use it. It's available. And then a second part is be sure to be gracious. Sometimes they'll respond to you, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they need you to send that breakup email so that they can breathe a sigh of relief and move on because they don't want to disappoint you either. You just say, we haven't received payment as mentioned in the email below. We'll cancel the outstanding invoice. Thank you for your interest in sponsoring. We hope you'll be able to join us next year. End of story. Simple. So I just wanted to give you guys some tools that you can use, some resources, easy ways to ask. I am available. I'm on the Slack channel. Here's my email. Come have lunch with me. Send me all your specific questions. I have done this for years. I've seen everything. And I don't tell those war stories in public like this, but I can share some with you as we go. So thank you.
That reminded me of some, well, actually that talk reminded me of a lot of things. Get yourself set up. While Yoba's getting set up here, I will, speakers, I'll kind of ping you to see exactly how you want to do this. But remember a little bit earlier, I was like, look, you can update the DevOpsDays website with everybody's slides. Guess what I'll do a little bit later, so that way, if there are any of the talks like Laura's where you're like, oh, I want to steal this. Now, I'll have to figure, I don't know where your slides are, so I'll make that happen. But that's, yes, yeah, we'll put that up there. So on the program page, hopefully in the next few days, maybe not the next 2 days, I might be a little distracted from website updating. But those of you who know me know that I'm really going to probably do it at 11 o'clock tonight. That will actually happen. Anyway, awesome, very, very good. One thing I just wanted to say, so Laura said, I think this is a common practice among all DevOps days to not offer benefits till it's paid. Surprisingly not. One of the best tips is cash up front. Then again, in open spaces later about sponsorships, I'm sure I know quite a few of you can tell stories about having to chase people, because once the event is passed, they don't give a shit about giving you the money anymore. And now you're going to chase them for 8 to 9 months. So anyway, good stuff. That said, how many people here have been running a DevOps Days for more than a year or 2? I think you will enjoy this next talk. So I'm really pleased to welcome our next speaker, who is going to talk about how not to burn out as a DevOps Days organizer. I'm expecting to see lots and lots of people taking pictures of slides. But thank you, welcome, and let's have a great time.
Awesome. So hi, everyone. So this is how not to burn out as a DevOps Days organizer. So I'm Joep. You can follow me on the various socials. Maybe they exist, maybe they don't after this talk. We'll see. So I'm an organizer for DevOps Days Amsterdam and Eindhoven, both in the Netherlands. Been working with the team for a couple of years now. And I gotta be honest, I am not in a presentation giving mode just yet. This is me a couple days ago in France, enjoying my summer holidays, not thinking about work at all, but also realizing I still have to make a slide deck. So a very good way of actually burning out in a couple days' time is realizing I gotta do a talk for you all. So that's what I did the last couple of days. I am nervous giving this talk, but we'll power through it. Give me a compliment later if that's appropriate. But we're going to talk about how to not burn out, specifically around dealing with, you're part of a team, you're organizing this high-stakes event. How do you do that? How do you stay sane? So a couple things that I think make a ton of sense is realize you're working with a team. Realize you're working on a high-stakes event. And, you can't do that alone. So go team. Realize this is a team effort. You're not in this alone. It's never going to work. But people are going to people, unfortunately. Nothing much we can do. There are a ton of different things that happen. So people have different views, they have different expectations, they exhibit behavior that is different than yours. They have different belief systems. And so you got to figure out all of that with your team. And also life happens. So how do you not burn out? So it's not work. Don't treat it as such. In Dutch, we have a saying, it's voluntary, but it's not without obligation. If you step into a team of organizing, then you are committing to a certain level of effort, a certain level of responsibility. But that is not endless. It is not without bounds. So, pro tip, learn to say either yes, but, or no. And that's a very difficult word, I know. But also realize, things happen, life happens, and things change. And be respectful of that, of those shifting abilities to contribute. That stuff happens all the time. And it's not very clear-cut where you begin with a responsibility and then it ends at some point and it's exactly as you pictured. No, stuff changes all the time. So do gut checks, communicate, ask, how are you doing to other teammates. Help each other often, not just once, but often. And as a group, make sure that everyone can always step back at any time for any reason. And I'll dive into that specific aspect a little more down the line. But if I want to communicate one thing to y'all is make sure that you're able to do this as a team. Make sure no one feels the sole responsibility for anything. So who was it? Who runs the website again? Maddie? That's you, man. So as an individual, plan for some finite level of commitment and communicate those finite levels. Make sure other people in your team, in your organizing group, know of these levels. Know of the things that you do and you won't do. And as always, be mindful of that cognitive load and step back early and kind of a little earlier than is needed because you still need to do that handover. That also means I was proud of this one too, yeah. But this does mean, do proper onboarding and not, hey, welcome to the team. This is Joop. He's going to do a bunch of stuff now. No, actually help him be successful. Talk them through the processes. Talk them through the runbooks. If you don't have runbooks, write runbooks. And also, learning mistakes and experimentations are the norm. So everything that happened in the past will not happen again in that specific way in the future. So be mindful of that. Make sure that you realize as a team, this is a continuously changing effort. It's never the same. Not 1 year has been the same for me. I think you can all relate to that as well. And the thing that I struggle with in realizing, that's one of my very individual things, is I sometimes forget that every organizer contributes in a very different way. But I still believe that there are different ways how each individual will add value. And so this is one of the things that I've been trying for a couple months now is to figure out, okay, what's that person doing specifically? What do they believe is their value? And then acting upon that, instead of just assuming and kind of not having that conversation. And that kind of means doing the Pac-Man. So who here knows what the Pac-Man is at a conference? This is where you'll leave a little space for someone else to join your discussion. So you don't stand in a closed circle. You'll leave a little bit of a gap open for someone to join. So I propose that we do this, but for organizing. Specifically for us as a group. Invite newcomers to share their opinion, to do it their way, instead of, this is how we've always done this particular thing. right? So let's do the Pac-Man bot for organizing. And that kind of assumes that any group of volunteers, any group of organizers, is a changing group, continuously, constantly changing. Because new organizers bring new perspectives, and if we don't have those new perspectives, the group stops learning. So make change the norm. Make it normal, make it so that everyone feels that they can add something to the group. So let's do the Pac-Man. And then one thing I like to do is celebrate success and failure in equal measure. I always have a joke where I do this with cake. I haven't done it in a while, but cake is always a good idea. A toetje, Floor, is also a good option. It is. But don't focus on the things that go right. Focus on the things that go wrong too. And make sure, as a group, you're just open to the fact that experimentation means failing. Some things will work, some things will not work. But make a party out of it. And don't do seagull management. So I love this because I used to have a boss years ago that was kind of the prototype of a seagull manager. He'd literally come in, storm in, have opinions, and then run away again. And we'd not see him for a month. And so I don't think that's a very effective way, especially if you have newcomers in a group and people that have done it for a little while. That doesn't really set an ambience of experimentation and voicing different opinions. So let's not crap all over each other's work. I think if you do that, that's a surefire way to get a burnout. And if there is feedback, because there's always feedback, do it compassionately. Do it, honest, open. Give the actual feedback, but be nice about it. So I don't know if every team does this in every different city, but we use, in the Netherlands, we use teams to do different pieces of work. So we have a venue team, we have a catering team, etc. And what I think really helps is to set clear boundaries on a team and on an individual level. This is what we do, this is what we don't do, and communicate clearly about those do's and don'ts. And there's a lot of overlap, right? So the sponsor team has to work with the venue team, and the speaker team has to work with the venue team, et cetera, et cetera. So be very explicit about those areas where you have the overlap. And this helps empower those teams to make the decisions and kind of to prevent that confusion around who makes the decisions. And then define exclusivity on a team level. So if the sponsor team also does kind of the layout for the sponsors at the venue, be very explicit. This is the sponsor team's responsibility. Don't leave that somewhere in the middle because, again, in that overlap is where issues start. And no single organizer should carry any specific responsibility alone. So back when we did DevOps Days online during the pandemic, I felt super responsible for a couple different things. Like I think I did platform, and I was so deep into that I felt no one else could share that responsibility. That was not good. Like I recognized that too late. I actually dropped out. I was physically sick because of that. But yeah, let's not carry a responsibility alone. And then one thing I learned from one of our co-organizers, Thomas, at Amsterdam, is to use time-boxed consensus to get input. So as in the previous talk with the invoices, say, I want to get input by this Friday, but we need this Friday because we need to move on. So that always helps a lot. And then kind of do a risk versus impact assessment. Is the small decision, is the big decision? Because if it's small, it has zero risk or it has little impact, go and make the decision, move forward. If you think, hey, this is irreversible, this has a lot of impact or the risk is very large, make it a team decision. So go out of just your venue team or sponsor team and then discuss it with the whole group. And then also lean into T-shaped expertise. Like I said, me with the platform during the pandemic, make sure there's no, quote unquote hero that has super specific knowledge, no one else has that knowledge, and you're kind of dependent on them to make it happen. Make sure you kind of distribute that knowledge across the different teams. And if you have specific knowledge, that's fine too, but make sure you're on different teams to share that knowledge. Communication is always important, of course. So prevent us versus them while you're doing that. Run into a couple of different instances of this where it's the sponsor team that didn't do this, or it's the venue team that didn't do this. So communicate, work transparently, share that info so that you don't get into an us versus them mentality. Don't think that helps a lot. Call out bad behavior, obviously, but do it nicely. And then tenure, and I talked about this a little earlier, tenure does not equal the right to have more opinions. All right, so succession planning. If you're the most senior person in an area, you're training someone else this year to be the most senior, but also you're doing something else. That makes sure no one gets into the position of being that expert that no one else has the expertise for. So start handovers before it's too late and make that a continuous part of everything that you do. Make sure there's always something or a shadow that you're training, and always make sure that you're a shadow yourself. So don't be Brent. All right, that's me for now. I want to thank you for being here, listening to me, and let's do a couple of open spaces about this later.
Thank you. Lots to think about there, and I think we're going to have a lot of conversations about that. We will move into our last talk of the morning before we go into lunch. And knowing a little bit about what the next talk is, unintentionally, there was a couple really great segues that just happened right there you're about to see. So welcoming to the stage for the final talk before we go into open spaces, which, as we all know, is the real DevOps Days thing, but, you know, there's a whole thing about that. Is Aaron from DevOps Days Kansas City. Great welcome to our program here, and he's going to teach us about how to be excellent to each other. Aaron, take it away.
Thank you.
Big green button.
Can everybody hear me? That's a good start then. The green one? Oh, is my sound not going to come through? Oh, shucks. Oh, wait, maybe? All right. No worries. I'm not going to have the extra audio video stuff that I was expecting, but that's all right. So in the 1989 classic movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, they use a catchphrase that a really fragile future is built on: to be excellent to each other. Also in their adventure, they learn a valuable lesson that learning from other cultures is essential. My name is Aaron Blythe. I started the DevOps KC meetup in 2013, and we ran pretty solid for about 7 years prior to the thing that we've alluded to a number of times on stage already today, the pandemic. I also put together a crew of what turned out to be some of my closest friends, and we did 4 DevOps days from 2016 to 2019, and we hope to relaunch in 2024. And honestly, the reason that I'm here today is to reignite that passion, to get us back into doing that, because I think it's one of the fondest things I look back on in my tech career. Our first year of DevOps Days KC, I was very nervous that people were not going to show up, be that attendees or speakers. I went so far as to create a speaker contract, knowing that it was not legally binding in any way. However, I wanted people to commit to actually showing up and being there on that day. And it was a very light contract. It was sort of humorous in places. It was not backed by money, but it was backed by the word of the person that they were going to show up. I think that both sides benefited from this. We ended up filling out that first year to almost fire capacity. Of course, selling 50% of the tickets in the last 2 weeks, as is always the case. All the speakers were awesome, and I think that the communication of this agreement had a lot to do with that. The following year, I drafted an organizer agreement, and I wrote a blog about it at the time, contemporaneously. From the original blog post, I said, as we set out this year, we decided to have an organizer agreement. I sat down and wrote this, the first one, in an attempt to keep things basic, and I also wanted to cover things that were ambiguous, but caused me or other people's strife in that first year that we did our event. So I'd like to go through that contract and discuss where it was either helpful or unhelpful. Just so there was no ambiguity, we captured via email that every individual agreed, and this was responded to the full group on the distribution list. So this provided accountability that you agreed to every other organizer that we would do these things that we're about to discuss. In case you don't already know, sometimes the people that are willing to put on a show can have big personalities, you know? So number one was the biggest for me at the time, and it was the top thing that helped me to settle most of the disputes that we had throughout the next couple years. And that was, I agree that the ultimate goal is to put the best show possible on the day of the event. So this was an easy one to pull out and say, well, what puts on the best show? Like, I see we have a disagreement here, but like, to make the decision, what's the best show? What's best for our audience? Help me understand how your side of this argument would make the day better for the people that are sitting in the seats watching us, right? And that was a really good one. That one, I think, is the top one. I think if you were to go about having an organizer's agreement, this is the one you definitely want to have. The second one was, I agree to have fun and encourage others to have fun. This one I pulled out quite a bit in one-on-one discussions, not in the big group chat or whatever. And it would be kind of like, you seem a little mad. Are you having fun? Do you think that like what's going on is causing other people around you to have fun? And I reminded people that we're all volunteers and we're looking to have a good time. So let's not take any of this too seriously, that we get mad or whatever. And these two were like my absolute must-haves, and they've been in every iteration since. Next was, I agree to be most excellent. That's where there would be more sound. Yeah. So I agree to be most excellent to all of the other organizers by being patient, inclusive, tolerant, open, and helpful. This line is really important to me because it keeps things somewhat light with the most excellent, but I also see a future that is bright, as you see in the first Bill and Ted's movie with The Excellent Adventure. Okay, here we brought in the specific tools that we were using at the time. Those tools were Trello and Slack, but the most important thing to me here was visibility. I agreed that I'll update either Trello or Slack, or both, with the work that I plan to do and the work that I have done to be respectful of other people's time, to minimize rework or double work. For those of you that have been around this space for a while, you may remember that before Gene Kim and their crew wrote the Phoenix Project, they wrote another book called Visible Ops, right? And this was a really early attempt to simplify things into simple rules when you have these overbearing ITIL processes, which is kind of what I was trying to do, is simplify a very large contract into very short, terse things to guide us so that we had the best possible show. So I like processes that are very simple, but they also surface those most important things. Here, what we did was a simplification of the Apache voting process. For those of you that are not familiar with this, basically you vote publicly with an agreement of a +1 to any proposal that is put out there, or disagreement with a -1. And then we also allow time, if anyone is to disagree, for them to form an argument and form some type of alternate proposal, right? So we give about 2 days, right? So if there is a -1, then we don't move forward even if we have the requisite number of votes, because we want people to say, okay, wait, that's a good idea, but I have this other idea. The current Apache voting process is more complicated. It's got fractions. It's got a couple of pages of explanations, and we don't need all that. Like I said, I like simple stuff. I will say that our process did get more complicated for 1 year. We brought in all these other rules, taking into account the person who put the proposal up can't actually vote. And then there was a quick close option if you were able to get to a certain number of votes in the first hour, and then a whole bunch of other silly rules, right? And then we were like, really, it doesn't matter. We're going to set the number of, there's X number of organizers, you hit 60%, we're going to go forward, right? And that's basically how it was. Again, allowing time for dissension. These next two are based around the fact that everyone involved is a volunteer and a human. I sort of wish that I could personally agree to these ground rules for myself, for all of the groups that I'm involved in. And those rules are, I agree to keep up on the updates to the best of my ability, but understand that myself and others will need to ask for progress of certain tasks, and through those conversations that new things will be uncovered. And this was one that caused strife the year before. It was like, basically, someone's gonna have to ask you if you're done with that, right? And just be cool, like be like, no, I'm not done, right? And then the next one was, I agree to admit when things are not working on a specific task and ask for help rather than hiding it. Again, we're volunteers. We're not getting paid for this. You're not trying to save face or whatever. Like, we're just trying to put on a show, right? So just tell people that this ain't working, and then they might have ideas. They've been waiting for the opportunity, whatever that may be. And then the final two things on the agreement are, I agree that I have read and will abide by both the organizing guide, which is on the DevOpsDays.org site, and the code of conduct. So, was it helpful? In my opinion, yes. In each year, there were instances where the contents of this document eased some conversation and set us back on track from some silly thing. Like I said, the DevOps days we ran were from 2016 to 2019. There were some divisive things in the world during that period. For people that maybe aren't from the US, like maybe politics, weird stuff, I don't know. But like there was conversations where it was like, this is not about our conference. Let's move this back into our conference, right? Would I change anything? We did make it more complicated the second year, but then we reverted back to my original contract. And what we did is we started a document for procedural things. And the procedural things like voting processes and all those things can be amended throughout the year as we become smarter. But that just became a third document in addition to the organizing agreement, well, the organizer guide and the code of conduct that you said, I also will agree to abide by this, right? One other thing that I would change is there are better tools now, like maybe use DocuSign or something. But I did kind of like the old hokey thing of actually emailing physically, or not physically, electronically mailing everybody on the distribution list to say, like, I agree to these things.
Dear Bill and Ted, good luck on the report. Sincerely, Bill S. Preston, Esquire, and Ted Theodore Logan. That was nice of us.
That was nice of us, right? All right. So in summary, I'm going to take the thing that was already terse and make it even terser to give you an idea of like what I think this agreement was. Basically, it was like to make a decision, it's whether or not it puts on a good show. What do we do every day? We make sure we have fun. What are we going to do? We're going to be excellent to each other. We want to make the work visible. We're going to collaborate as a team, and then understand that we're all humans and volunteers. And then we're going to read the existing rules.
Bill, my friend. Yeah.
Oh. All right.
Dear Bill. Bill, my friend. Yes, Ted, my friend. This has been a most excellent adventure.
All right.
San Dimas High School football room.
I always want to say that in a presentation, but I let him say it because, like, you know, it's from the thing. Let's see. Did I have one more slide? Oh, shucks. Okay, so I had one more slide, but I lost it somewhere in the whole thing. What's that? Oh, actually, what I wanted to share is that you can see it on my, I don't need the slides right here on my shirt. I started a nonprofit with two of my colleagues that I actually met through DevOps Days. And what we are going to start doing is that first conference is going to be in November in Kansas City. But we want to talk about all these emerging technologies and how they're going to change things, not just technology-wise, but also like socially, economics, and a number of different things. And we're going to have a conference about that. And it's called Next 5. And we want to basically put our sights on 5 years in the future and have companies that have, like, I think, we're the filter through which we'll accept talks or whatever, but things that we think are positive and that will actually help with all these emerging technologies, because we know that like economically it's going to switch things around, it's going to socially switch things around, and there's going to be all kinds of technology. So similar to DevOps Days, where it's not just about the technology, we want to actually have discussions about that. So we plan to have lawyers and politicians and like people outside of tech actually come and talk about these changes that are coming through generative AI, all of the above new technologies. So that's something that I'm doing now. If you want a cool hologram sticker, come talk to me afterwards and we can talk about that. So thank you.
That brings us to the last of our talks for the morning. I apologize, I had to step out for a second. I had a DevOps Day Chicago speaker had to call me about a very important question that had to do with their outfit that they're wearing. The speaker is my 11-year-old daughter, so she's very excited about that. So I look forward to that tomorrow. DevOps Days Chicago organizers who've been around for a few years watched Aaron's talk and went, oh, I remember when we used to do that. And I'm sitting there going, why don't we do that anymore? And we should have. But definitely, as we like to say, good artists, good DevOps copy, great DevOps steal. So thanks for that. Before we head off to lunch, we have also joining us today at our summit is one of very early DevOps Days person to help bring the first DevOps Days to the United States after Ghent. I wanted to give him a minute to share some exciting news. Just a couple minutes because we're going to get ready for lunch. Lunch will be ready right out of here, and then we'll be back in here at 2 p.m., 1400 for open space opening. So enjoy your lunch, and but I'll turn over to John for just a minute, and it's all yours.
All right, I got a couple of slides. I'm not going to bore you, and I'm not getting away from in a lunch.
You didn't know this is coming.
Yeah, yeah. The slides, so I don't know. Yeah, I had asked Maddie for a favor, so where do I plug in? Okay. Unplanned work. All right. I need 3 hands. All right. So we can hold that for a second. I think is it the other side? Yes. Yeah, that side. Hey, you like that? Good. Now I just gotta get my password right, and then we'll be okay. Yeah. What would you expect from the help of organizers to help an idiot like me figure out how to type his password? All right, there we go. This should have been quick. And then I can't see anything. All right, just quickly, the reason I'm telling you this is not to sort of... Microphone, sorry. I will make an excuse. I came from a red eye from Denver this morning, so I'm not 100%. So I've been doing this for a long time. Actually, I was the only American at the first DevOps Day in Ghent. And then Andrew Clay Schaefer and Damon Edwards and myself ran the first DevOps Days, actually the first 3 in the US. And got really lucky, met Gene Kim. We co-authored the DevOps Handbook with a couple of extraordinary people, some other books, and then I won't bore you with all the stuff I've done, but I've been working 10 years on this book that I've been incredibly passionate about. Like, I'm a student of Lean. Thank you so much. And anybody who knows me has been like, please, either shut up or get this book out. But today, the book is available. And And the reason I wanted to talk a little bit about the background, in fact, I got to tell the Visible Ops story. So you put up the Visible Ops. The first DevOps Days, Gene was there, Gene Kim, and he had asked me to introduce him to John Allspar. And so, like, and John didn't know this was coming. So we get over to John, and I'm like, Gene wants to meet you, great. And John goes, oh my goodness, you're Gene Kim. He pulls out a coffee-stained version of Visible Ops and asks him to sign it. Isn't that crazy? But a lot of the stories here, I've got a little bit of the history of DevOps and, like that whole sort of narrative. A lot of these things are in my book. And so this is the book. Again, it's there actually is shortage on printed paper, so I'm going to have to wait till January to put out the actual physical copy. But the Kindle and the audio versions are available today. And then 2 more slides, folks, and then you can go eat. Is if you can't brag about yourself, then like, what's the point, right? So I got Jim Whitehurst. If you don't know who Jim Whitehurst is, he was the CEO of Delta who took them out of bankruptcy. He sold Red Hat to IBM, and I asked him if he would just say something in the book. I said, Jim, you don't have to read the book. I know you're a busy person. And he read the book, and he came back with a beautiful quote. And then Jeffrey Liker, if you understand the whole Toyota way, he's the guy that coined the Toyota way. And my good friend Damon, felt really good too. One other thing I will say, like, never put me on a stage with a mic, right? Is the thing, if you're thinking about writing a book, your network is incredible. 10 years I worked on this book. Then I got really serious in the pandemic and said, now I'm really gonna write this book. And Gene had been bugging me, like, write this book, write this book. At the end of the first year, I was like, I'm done. And then 18 months later, with the help of about 30 people, of an incredible network that turned my book into an amazing book because of the people that we know. So, like, don't let anybody rush you. The network you have in here, if you write a book, these people you'll get, there was one person who just wrote me a manifesto about the things that, like, great advice. So, like, really, like, if you're thinking about writing stuff, this network that we built, take advantage of it. You'll be so amazed what you get out of everybody. And to that end, and the reason I came here is because I know that your influence is around the world, right? This is one of the most important events in DevOps. All of you control DevOps Days around the world, right? This is incredible. Thank you, Maddie. So therefore, if everything works out right, that's a free copy of the Kindle version. Now, here's the deal. Please only take one for 2 reasons. One, I think only have about 80 available or 100 available. And then if you take more than one, somebody else in this room might not get one. And anyways, but yeah, and if it doesn't work, please track me down or go ask Maddie. Now, thank you so much. Take a picture of it. Like I said, I told Maddie that I think you were the influences around the world, and it's an honor for me to give you this to be able to see if you want to read this book, and maybe if you like it, you could say something nice about it. Thank you so much.